got to go ahead. So I think we are good.
All
What's
right.
going on,
Says
guys?
live in the corner.
Back at it with Broken Gears Airsoft. I don't know if I told you guys last time, but one of our awesome chat admins informed me that he felt the show was just too regimented last time. So I told him that we can accommodate that. And so this is one concurrent winging it about whatever with the description updated earlier to cover my ass. So new opening segments for the live show, the anarchic festival that it is. What's everyone been working on lately, airsoft wise? Anything good?
For me, just nothing particularly exciting or innovative. Honestly, I've been doing more work on the my lifelong project gun, the Real Sword SVD. I've got it closed.
Poster in back, right?
Yeah. I've got it closed back up now. So I really just need to get out and test it. But I've got a good feeling about it. I've tried a new nub, a different thickness of foam that I'm trying for it. So we'll see where that goes.
Hell yeah.
Other than that, I guess I also did a little bit of work on a WE Makarov I have. Because one of the problems I've heard with that, and after examining it a little closer seems to be true, is that their hop-up design is very cool. I really like it from an engineering perspective. It is very interesting. It just needs a little extra coaxing to really get its full potential out of it. And what I mean by that is, it probably would have been very smart of me if I had thought about going into this with that like at hand, taken apart, because then I could like hold it up to the camera and show people. So I guess for now
we have to play the whole show by ear. There's nothing like that allowed.
Fair enough. Well, if people were willing to wait for me to go get like a push pin set and a hammer, and were willing to tolerate noises, I could take things apart, I guess. But at any rate, it's to not drag on too long. Basically, the hop-up arm is designed. It's a very low-profile design overall because the WE Makarov is very, very small frame, and the hop-up arm is a bent piece of sheet metal, fairly thin, actually. If I had to take a guess, I'd say like thinner than 24 gauge. Maybe it's pretty thin stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, at any rate, so it doesn't get a lot of it doesn't. I don't want to say pressure. It doesn't get a lot of intrusion into kind of the whole area where the BB is going to push through. I'm blanking on the term right now. But it doesn't basically push the mound. Yeah, it doesn't push the mound of the. Thank you. The mound of the bucking doesn't really. At its maximum kind of hop setting, it doesn't intrude all that far. And so an interesting thing I found online that somebody suggested was actually shimming it with a piece of plastic. So I just cut like some out of actually a basically like vacuum formed like blister packs and things like that. I had like one of those packs for like some glue or something that I bought at the store. And so I just cut up a bit of that shrink wrap plastic, cut it to kind of fit I found a curved bit and kind of cut it so it fit kind of really nicely over the mound. And it seems to apply some great flat pressure. Again, that's a thing I need to take to the range. So I've got two things that I have to range test for that and things like that. So nothing super innovative necessarily, but little tweaks, things like that. Pretty much just hop-up related and things like that. So curious to see how that does.
Cool. Tom, what you been up to? Anything?
Working on the latest iteration of my remote mine project. This time using basically, instead of having an adapter for Thunderbee specifically to just utilize Thunderbees, it uses basically an electronic modified version of that. The old like grenade in a soup can booby trap trick, where basically you put a grenade with the pin pulled into some kind of tube that holds the spoon on, with the intent being that as soon as somebody moves the can or pulls the grenade out of the can, the spoon can fly off, set the timer off, and boom goes the grenade. The idea with this is that there's basically the tube, the grenade that goes in the tube, and then a linear actuator that can push the grenade out of the tube on basically remote control. So I had to design a 3D printable linear actuator to work with like a geared up DC motor. These like generic one you can buy on Amazon. Rig that up to the same exact remote relay system that I used on my previous mine iterations, and it seems to work so far. I just have to test. It works great with Thunder Bees. I have to test what other grenades on the market it'll work with. I would really like for it to work with Thunder Bees as well as like the tag-in grenades. That would be really nice. Or really pretty much any grenade that has a spoon. So I'm going to design it basically with the tube diameter to accommodate as many different types of grenades as possible. The intent being that you could basically just carry a couple of these mines around and just use them with any grenade that you happen to have on hand. So instead of needing to carry around a dedicated landmine that has a grenade already attached to it all the time, you can basically have a mine that can take a grenade that you just happen to have on your vest that you can, if you don't want to use it as a mine, you can use the grenade as a hand grenade. Or if you need a mine, you can just pull out a hand grenade that you happen to have, stick it in there, and away you go. So that's been my project for the past, couple months. And then I got a resin printer for printing other stuff that's been kind of taking up a lot of my project time. Nothing particularly airsoft related, but that's been a big time sink for me. So I've been sort of jumping between that and working on this mine project. So yeah, that's where I've been at.
You do things besides airsoft?
It's shocking, right?
Cool.
I did also hear, and actually, you mentioned forum posts. I did hear an interesting, but not here. But you know what? Screw you, man.
I'm up to something really important. I'm trying to sell my medium regular set of Navy digital camo and buy a small regular set. Camo.
That's absolutely thrilling. But yeah, no, I saw an interesting post on a not a forum post because forums aren't a thing anymore. But it was a Reddit post that was somebody, completely way worse. They had there's a variety of landmines that have been floating around for probably 20 years at this point. They run off of CO2 cartridges and they're like about the size of a dinner plate and maybe 6 inches deep. They're pretty large for an airsoft landmine. They're actually meant for paintball or airsoft. They're a type of landmine where basically you step on it. A couple companies have made them over the years. You step on it, has a little tube on it, and that tube either fires out water, some kind of paint mixture like the old school paintball paint grenades, or flour. And it kept getting brought up in this Reddit thread, really highly upvoted thread. I think it had like 2,500 upvotes or something like that. Kept getting brought up about this being the video was of it loaded with flour, and the guy stepped on it and fired the flour up into his face, and very funny. Guy's covered in flour. Everybody's kept being worried about dust explosions for some absolutely baffling reason. I was completely confused by this just from my health and safety background.
These are people who gladly fucking walk through.
Let's not get it. Yeah, fair enough.
Ignoring as possible.
Correct. Yeah, ignoring the fact that people do a variety of considerably more hazardous things on the airsoft field on a regular basis. I just can't understand where somebody would
benefit of the
think
doubt,
that
maybe they play somewhere Enolas aren't allowed. I don't know of any of those places.
Dust explosions. I mean, again, that's more of a smoke. I mean, I can sort of see where they're coming from because flour can explode theoretically, but a couple tablespoons of flour being put into a landmine and then fired up into the open air without any real ignition sources nearby, apart from what I can only assume they were worried about, like a spark from like a shorted out AEG or something like that. But that wouldn't have nearly enough energy to actually trigger a dust explosion with this from the small amount of dust that's generated by this landmine. I mean, you need an absolutely ridiculous amount of dust in a confined space to really get a dust explosion to go off.
Okay, so they're not even necessarily worried about particle inhalation. But
no, well, I guess, that was kind of, somebody did mention that. I mean, it's flour, so you get flour fired into your face, you're going to cough for a few seconds, maybe a minute, and then you're fine. I mean, it's not really a major disaster. But, yeah, no, I was just very surprised to see that much of an uproar about such an obscure type of hazard that I would not have expected anybody to A, know about, B, reference, and start complaining about on the internet. But I am perpetually surprised when I go on Reddit and find these absolutely baffling health and safety decisions that people make.
Right. Well, that's part
Or
of why
decide
I
to
really
latch onto.
being roped into this. In your perspective.
Mm.
So, I think that's about it for fun forum posts. I don't actually associate, spend a whole lot of time on any of these boards. I just
Smart.
Airsoft related boards. I just run a show about it. So, Paul, seen any gems lately?
I think in the interest of my blood pressure, I've managed to stay away from that section of the internet for a bit. Aside from, again,
Wisdom.
finding the individual things that I am looking for in particular. I don't just kind of idly browse, I guess. I look to see, like, if I'm doing a project or working on something, go, hi, I wonder if somebody else has done something similar or has encountered a similar problem. And we'll do that.
Whoever's cat was meowing, tell him thanks, because it synced up perfectly with whenever our first viewer popped in.
Oh,
I've been shilling on my Facebook page for 10 minutes.
I apologize. I left the door open, and my cat is being
barged in.
Quite needy. Yes, he's generally he's very needy. He's very cute. I'm not sure if we like, I can kick him out. Otherwise,
I don't care.
Fair. Hi. Want to say hi to the internet? Or is it just hi to me today?
He's an essential staff member, but he doesn't have to come on if he doesn't want to.
Fair. I don't know. I think he's just hungry for my attentions, but I have set aside time for this. So, anyway.
Yep. Whenever you're ready, take it away. We are going through your first piece of fascinating Soviet block gear. We got to see, me and my two friends got to see some of it on one of our old test streams, but the public at large, which is the same amount of viewers so far, has not. So take it away. Well, let me just ask you first, Paul. Did this? So obviously you've been collecting. Have you been collecting this stuff at least as long as you've been playing Airsoft? Start later. Start earlier.
Not quite. That came a little after. I've always been very interested in. Well, not always. I started being pretty interested in like Russian history and culture and things like that. In late elementary school, I want to say like maybe 7th grade, I want to say thereabouts.
Early then.
Yeah. Started teaching myself Russian a little bit then. My family's Polish, but far generation, so I'm like 3rd generation American, so I don't really speak much, but I'm trying to teach myself that as well. Anyway, off topic. So when I got into Airsoft, my first real gun and camo set was actually German, believe it or not. It was a JG G36C and a set of surplus Flecktarn. Tom was actually there for that.
I was.
Actually recommended me to the shop where I got it, and I owe a lot to Tom for getting me into Airsoft in the right way. Honestly,
I was right. That was not an unpopular launchpad gun back in the day.
That was like the launchpad gun back in the day. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I like the way it looked and everything like that. So yeah, I did that, and it wasn't until maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, that I started leaning a lot more heavily into Russian and eventually just general comm block stuff, because that interests me a lot. I think I got a Cyma AK-74U, which we still have, and we have beat that gun to crap because I didn't have the G36.
If I put a battery in it, it would probably still shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that thing. I did a lot of tuning here and there for it. And for a clone, it's good. The body hasn't held up for what we've put it through, but internally,
I was just going to ask, brief digression, since this is ostensibly an Airsoft teching podcast. Are Cymas either then or now or both have a reputation for being fairly reliable guns, or is this kind of anomalous that it's probably still going if we threw a battery in it, or what?
Overall,
do they have a rep at all, one way or the other?
I can only speak to my own experiences, honestly. I've heard some people trash talk Cyma, some people like them. My personal experience, and take that whatever you like, sample size of one, is they are great guns for the money. They are fantastic beginner guns.
Mm-hmm.
And their internals are reasonably solid. Yes, sorry. Now we have...
He's making his rounds. It's fine.
Yes. Batman.
Is he a Cyma fan or not?
I was about to say, yeah, he's just a fan of things in general. He's a very enthusiastic animal. Anyway, sorry. All right. Sure, whatever. Anyway, so where was I? Shoot. Yes, Cymas are very good guns. They're pretty dependable. I would say a step above JG, but I'm not going to compare them to some of the better established clone companies like G&G or VFC or things like that. They're great for their price.
Clone meaning TM clone, right?
Yes, correct. We're old fogies as far as Airsoft is concerned, so we still throw that term around for any company that uses entirely TM spec stuff without really much innovation of their own to speak of. They don't really make anything outside of Tokyo Maruri's line of guns because, generally speaking, that term clone is a little bit of history. Those companies bought TM's molds to cast their gearbox shells and things like that, actually. And one of the reasons they came out shoddier is because they basically bought, when TM said, hey, these molds are getting kind of out of spec for our tolerances, for our standards, we'll just sell them because they're still usable molds. They're just not making parts that to our specifications.
Their spec, yeah.
And companies in China were like, don't mind if I do. And yeah, I bought those up and started making the same things, but cheaper, the standard Chinese plan. Just buy it, buy somebody else's intellectual property, start making the same thing, but cheaper, shittier, and just shovel it out. Which we could do a whole podcast on that, whether or not that was better for Airsoft, because a cheaper product helps it reach a wider audience because it's more accessible and bunch of other things. But to avoid to cut myself short on however many
tiers of digression we are now
exactly, yeah, seriously, I keep doing
17.
this. Yeah. Cyma good, yes, I would recommend it. They're a good upgrade platform if they don't do it for you right out of the box. Very easy to work on overall. Lots of standard parts compatibility because they're TM spec.
They do actually eat. Yeah, I mean, they are not like 15 air quotes TM spec. They are TM spec, so they will actually eat TM parts and things that are ostensibly TM compatible. So, yeah, as Paul mentioned, they're very keen to take upgrades, which is nice.
Yeah, I've had maybe 6-7 Cyma guns or Cyma models.
Yeah, probably about the same for me.
Yeah, maybe more over the course of my Airsoft career. And every single one of them's been a workhorse. I've never encountered a lemon. And that's over a 10-year history or so. 10 years since I started buying Cymas. Because, I bought my first Cyma AK, I think, at 17 or so, maybe 16.
Yeah, and kind of to that note, they haven't really changed that much over the years either. So, I mean, it's the models that they make that are like the Camo 48, which is like their AK model. They tragically never cloned Uzi, but they still work.
Yeah,
and they're still basically the same guns that they were making a decade ago. So yeah,
and they're steel the ones they offer like a couple of different lines. Some that are plastic bodied. The steel bodied ones, the CM 040 series, because they make like an AK-74, an AKM, an AK-105, things like that. A bunch of all those AK variants. If they're all the part numbers CM 04 something, 041, 042, 041C, things like that. That series in particular, I think highly of, because those are steel bodies and they are, low quality steel, but they are genuine steel. I've checked with the magnet. They're not just pot metal bodies and barrels. The They are at the very minimum steel bodies and barrels, and for airsoft that goes a ways for me. They're not going to be again like blued nicely or anything like that, but they're reasonably durable. They're cheap enough workhorses that are easy to work on, easy to repair. Great beginner to mid-level gun, I would say. And if you want to, you could shove good internals on it, give it a little tender love and care, and turn it into a really high-end gun if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. So Simas do the job.
Yeah, overall is what I would say. Simas do work.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that established, into our first gear or first item in our museum tour. What do you actually have for us today?
Sure. So I thought, just kind of really quickly on the spot here, something I could talk about at length. And so feel free to cut me short or ask questions as I go along this.
Right. I have nothing planned.
Yep. Is
this entire show.
Yeah, fair enough. Is one of my favorite pieces of equipment that. Or sorry, let me back up. Something that originally interested me a lot, especially concerning airsoft, about Russian stuff and communist bloc stuff, which, given that pretty much every communist country ended up being under the Soviet thumb for however many decades, varies country to country, ends up basically being Russian doctrine and things like that, is quite different to a lot of Western doctrines in a lot of different ways. A lot of different to, certainly very different from American, French, English, but even some of their closer neighbors like German and things like that. Very different methodologies on a lot of different things, which has always kind of interested me and things like that. And one of those things is, since I kind of tend to gravitate towards more of a sniper and scout kind of reconnaissance roles in airsoft, is kind of how Russia and the Soviet Union and communist bloc countries have kind of approached that concept and the implementation of that concept. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. But yeah, that is always very much it. And so interested me. And so one of the kind of very common things that the Russians have very widely adopted for decades and decades and decades at this point has been this kind of a sniper oversuit, which is not quite a ghillie suit, but more of a kind of a baggy camo print suit, which attempts to obscure the human silhouette and kind of break up the idea by applying a camouflage pattern that may or may not be the same as you would see on a normal battle dress uniform or similar equivalent, but just again, kind of through the way it is cut, the uniform itself, as far as an article of clothing goes, use that to obscure the kind of outline and shape and kind of disrupts the human silhouette and everything, more than a ghillie suit, which does that, but also has a bunch of garnish and other tie downs and everything like that attached to it, which you can then kind of retrofit in the field to add a bunch of like twigs and stuff you find. But even if you don't, like a lot of airsofters don't bother doing that, which makes sense because airsoft is a fairly fast-paced game. You're generally not laying in a position for a very, very long time outside of ops and things like that. But those, just having all those extra tie downs and everything like that can really disrupt the texture and everything of a body. So the light doesn't hit something flat. And so, yeah.
Comment and a question, which are not digressions. I do think they're, it's possibly on a viewer or two of ours minds, present or future. Comment. One, we obviously all got together for a game last month where you busted out probably at least the piece of gear on exhibit tonight. You are, I know you know what you're doing in other respects too, but you are nigh invisible with this thing. As funny, as dated as it is, and funny as it looks. That's just my hot take.
That's kind of you to say. Thank you.
The question that I think might be on some viewers' minds here is, you just mentioned no disrespect, a vague time frame of decades and decades. When approximately, if you know, did we really start seeing these things? Are they necessarily? Is even any like weird precursor to these suits pre-USSR? Was this
Um,
mostly a post-war thing, wartime? World War
Uh,
II?
to my knowledge, I would say that perfectly ties into actually kind of how I was going to start.
Okay.
Is I would say the formal adoption of sniper suits, where they started to become an issued piece of equipment, didn't really start in the Soviet Union until about World War II, or so. And I would say if I had to date it in the years, it's I don't know exactly. I would feel comfortable guessing 1940.
Okay. So
But
like,
I would need to double check on that
yeah, I
exactly.
was just asking from the perspective of like a part-time late Russian Empire and Russian Civil War nerd, if there's any
Oh,
evidence of anything along these lines around that time,
not
be
to
it
my
World War
knowledge,
One, the
no.
Russian Civil War, before even either of those. Okay.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. No. I'm sure you'll find maybe some individual soldiers got particularly crafty, but as an issued piece of gear,
Right.
formally adopted, no. Oh, there's there. Fair enough.
Okay. Yep.
Well, we have had a viewer chip in that the British did that. So, and fitting as well. So there, the adoption of snipers as a formal military element was varied country to country. It wasn't a universal concept that, starting out in kind of the interwar period, that every country saw the need for. The British really liked it. They saw its utility, especially in trench warfare and things like that.
Mhm.
And the Russians also saw great utility in that. And French, to varying degrees. Germans also had a pretty decent sniper program as well. The Americans, not really. The Americans actually famously didn't really have much of a sniper program going into World War II. They didn't end up really developing it until World War II. Kind of in the middle of the war, they started gaining more kind of experience and thought to themselves, hey, this thing might come in useful. But anyway, so to start the history off, I'll start with kind of interwar and and I'll focus on the Russians because that's the thing I know the most about, the thing I'm even potentially qualified to talk about, and also what I have here for examples and things like that. So the Russians have a very big interest in the concept of a sniper or a designated marksman and things like that. And so how they implemented was, at the time, they, like virtually every military at that point, didn't have a purpose-built sniper rifle. They basically picked their standard service rifle and basically did the pick of the litter for the best, most accurate ones that they tested at the factory and things like that, and simply said, set that one aside. We're going to be putting an optic on that and issuing that to snipers. And a lot of countries did that. British did that, Germans did that, and Russians did that. And as they developed their program, they eventually started to look into camouflage uniforms that they would issue to them. And I do not have an original issue, but I do have a reproduction. And what they started issuing was, basically, let me see if I can get it out here real quick, is basically this. This is a reproduction of the Russian World War II amoeba suit, or is what it is commonly called, mostly because of these large splotches that kind of resemble an amoeba under a microscope.
Okay.
And things like that.
I've seen this thing in the flesh, and that just occurred to me.
Yep. Yeah, and it's it's a pretty simple. Oh, I did not know that. Today I learned. Really?
Oh, the Evans bit about Italy?
Yeah, I did not know. Thank you for informing me. Yeah. Forstago has made some interesting points that I was not aware of. Thank you. See, I'm learning some stuff too. Yeah.
I had an inkling of what he just said about American snipers.
I was about to say, I had heard about the Civil War, yeah, because of the kind of leap in technology from standard muskets to kind of more like Kentucky rifles and things that actually had rifling and things like that, enabling more accurized precision shots aimed at key personnel and things like that, having more of a purpose, or more potential to actually be used and things like that. But yeah, at any rate, where was I? Oh yeah, so the amoeba suit and things like that, fairly standard, or pretty on par with a very basic camouflage pattern. It's 2 colors. Yeah. Ooh. Yep. Yeah. And kind of as our viewers pointing out, key feature is it is very oversized. It is very baggy. And especially you can kind of see in the hood here, it is kind of squared off. It doesn't come to a point or anything. It is just designed to be very blocky and kind of just blend the shoulders and the head and everything to just make you look very just lumpy and really disrupt the human silhouette, because the human eye we're social creatures. The way our brain is evolved tends to recognize certain things very quickly. We're very good at pattern recognition, for example. And also as social creatures, we are very quick to subconsciously recognize other humans in the distance or things like that. It's one of the reasons humans anthropomorphize objects so often, and we see human faces everywhere and things like that. Like the fronts of cars, people is a classic example where people see the 2 headlights and the grating there on the front makes 2 eyes and a mouth and things like that. That tendency for humans to kind of recognize that is a deeply ingrained piece of our psychology. We recognize humans and see humans in a lot of things, and our brain focuses on that, and it's very quick to recognize that. So one of the things you have to do to kind of effectively camouflage yourself is to kind of trick the brain into not seeing a human as quickly as you can. So you want to look less human. And so because, again, humans, social creatures, we focus on the face when we're interacting with people. We see the head-shoulder outline very commonly or very easily, very quickly. We generally subconsciously recognize that very quickly at distance and things like that. So I would argue, and I argue this based on what I've read through a couple different documents and things like that, suggesting that one of the biggest focuses of sniper camouflage or recon camouflage and things like that is disrupting such this outline and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know if I'm. Is the screen share what it's showing as the largest panel? I have the window open, so I obviously can't see. But for what you said a second ago, this photo I just randomly found on Google here seems to demonstrate the point at least fairly well.
Yeah, as far as what the uniform looks like, this is without the hood up
and how it
on either
functions.
of them.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, you can see, especially on the guy on the left, how baggy it is around his arms, and you can see that on the woman to the right as well. But yeah, it's just basically a very simple 2-color camouflage pattern meant to kind of use colors to kind of break up the texture of the body. But with the hood deployed, it also kind of breaks up your silhouette even further to try and get better camouflage. And the Russians, to this point, illustrates it also. An interesting little bit of history. The Russians didn't end up just issuing that to snipers. They also issued it to combat engineers, which had the armored chest plate that you see on the gentleman on the left in that picture, and things like that, and shock troops. The Russians really liked that, and it was fairly cheap, and you could throw it on top of Gymnastica. I'm probably butchering that. I forget what they called the M37 uniform at that time. I want to say it's a Gymnastica. But anyway, you could just throw this on top of anything. They were cheap, disposable, so you could rip this up or whatever. It didn't matter. And yeah, and it was cheap and effective and widely issued and things like that. And so that was kind of their first foray. Yeah, it was the things Russia really like to do with very large armed force, a lot of conscripts. They need things they can issue cheaply, and because they're conscripts, and because they're conscripts, they need to be fairly soldier-proof. So they need things that either won't be missed and can break easily, or can be fixed very easily, as seen with a lot of their other technology and things like that. It is, if it's not robust, it's easily maintained, generally speaking. Things like that. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of a starting Russian sniper suit technology. And they would continue to use that for several years into the 50s or so.
Okay.
And then it started to see less use and started to see replacement with this, which is genuine. This is not a reproduction. This is a KZS suit, which basically stands for Sniper's Camouflage Suit. Camouflage. I forget exactly what the acronym stands for. Admittedly, I'm embarrassing myself on live internet.
Live television.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, basically very similar sort of thing. Extremely baggy. And these are actually made from a light cotton weave that you can kind of see in here is very breathable, very see-through. That's done by design. It's actually quite nice to wear in summer and things like that. Very breathable, very light. It does tear somewhat easily if you start going through briars and things like that. But again, following the same methodology as the Amoeba suit, it's a 2-color pattern. And yep, exactly right. 2-color pattern.
Is this something similar, or is it? Did the colors vary slightly, at least by design, or is it just the lighting of the camera? Yours looks a little maybe darker, more muted.
No, that's it's. I think it's the lighting of my camera on everything. They were, yeah, they were pretty consistent from what I've seen, and I've seen a few in surplus stores. I've seen a few other people use them at Airsoft because they're pretty cheap. They're not as cheap as they used to be. They used to be like the easiest, cheapest way to get into a Russian Airsoft impression period because they were like $30 a pop at one point for a full set. Wow. It was dirt cheap for genuine stuff and everything. Now they're starting to dry up a little bit because they aren't really issued anymore. But the pattern stayed. The pattern, birch pattern, Berioska pattern, ended up being used on several uniforms afterwards. But to not get too far off topic, that was something that the Russians did to kind of replace the aging Amoeba suits and things like that. And that, in my opinion and in my experience, that is still a very effective pattern. That is still a very effective piece of camouflage, especially up in kind of northeastern U.S. where we're based on a sunny day in midsummer to like mid to late spring, like that kind of general time of the year when everything's still quite green. That is fantastic. Those 2 colors work very well for the green of leaves and the kind of the brighter sunlit areas kind of shining in between branches and leaves and things like that go very well. So that kind of
for that last reason, just a brief digression that I was a direct result of the epiphany I had in 2008 getting into this is people kind of sell short rather the effectiveness of a lot of tan camos in the woods because come dusk, what color approx do you think the sun's rays are? That's just a random reminder. But earlier you were just talking about how generally effective this pattern is, and I agree because I can't help but see at least a couple of the same or same-ish color swatches you do see in patterns like Marpat and Finnish M05, which are notoriously good patterns for this area.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
Again, obviously, summer.
Fair. Yeah. And to your end, I personally will attest to also tan camo can still be very good in the woods, regardless of time of year, because it's not always entirely green, especially if you're in a pine forest and there's deadfall or areas where the canopy or the plants nearby aren't allowing new growth to appear at kind of human head, waist, knee level. Things like that.
Right. I say another relevant tangent you just kind of reminded me of is that as someone who loudly argues, rightly as well, in my opinion, that sniping in the context of airsoft is really a play style rather than what kind of gun you're toting around. I think it's just self-evident through a couple of our friends who like to play in mostly solid colors and some other camos you just wouldn't think were too effective. that it's not hard to hide if you know what you're doing. I mean, you would have to be in something like my red high-vis shop coveralls, which are the color of my flag here, to really have a problem in every part of the woods. Obviously, some parts you'll have better luck than others, but yeah. Definitely don't need a top-end ghillie suit to really blend in.
I will definitely agree with that, and I will definitely agree with the sniping being a play style more than a piece of equipment and things like that. That said, I'm not going to lie and say, like, it doesn't matter, because speaking from experience, I've tried sniping in all of these wonderful camouflage oversuits I've collected. I've tried making my own camouflage gear, demi-ghillies, full ghillie suits, things of the like.
Oh, I remember some of that.
And and I've also tried sniping while wearing just our plain Jane gray, just boiler suit that we use for our airsoft team. And across all of those, across kind of the spectrum of levels of camouflage that those are, I definitely notice a difference in my success in camouflaging myself. So assuming that I'm relatively consistent in my play style or effectiveness during those times, it still definitely helps. But I definitely will say that if someone knows what they're doing, there's nothing preventing someone from wearing full, just solid color, olive drab, and being bright, sneaky. That can definitely happen. Skill definitely.
Yeah, the friend of ours I was thinking of likes to play in like almost usually sometimes a camo shirt, but a heavily dyed pair of, I believe, tiger striped pants. They look like a similar color to your shirt, if not your cabinet behind you.
Okay.
Dark brown. So
fair.
Yeah, I imagined I should rephrase or clarify that. That minty gray boiler suit you guys are so famous for is obviously going to cause a bit more of a problem than some other more earthly colors.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially if you start to get into anywhere a little outside of a sun ray, that just becomes a very dark human-shaped silhouette, and that it does not break up the silhouette at all.
Fairly awful camouflages for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. I see in the chat a mention of Carlos Hathcock, which is a famous Vietnam-era sniper who, I forget the exact details of his accomplishment, but I want to say he did a low crawl for about 1 kilometer or something of that nature, and killed a North Vietnamese officer at a distance with an M700 rifle, which was standard issue at the time. I want to say at a distance of about 650 meters. I'm not too confident in that exact figure. But anyway, he crawled for a ridiculous distance, amount of time, took a shot, got his guy, and got out just as a single one-man operation. That is
also, I think, had the longest ranged kill for a long time using an M2 Browning.
I would not be surprised if that was the same man.
Of all things,
yeah. But I know that was also a thing. Stinger being a known phenomenon. But at any rate, we've gone on tangent.
Right, I'm just laughing because I would believe every word of that if those were, if we were chatting in private and you told me, because just a glance at his Wikipedia page, and if this, information's been particularly well vetted, it looks like a book is directly cited, though. The PAVN placed a bounty of $30,000, doubtless in dollars at the time, on Hathcock's life for killing so many of their men. Rewards put on U.S. snipers by the PAVN at the time typically ranged from $8 to $2,000.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, and as it's pointed out by our audience right now, it was a general, so I did not mean to downplay Mr. Hathcock's achievements there. I was simply fuzzy on the details, and I did not wish to overstep that. But a general, and he's a particularly famous example. And to my knowledge, at least, if I remember correctly, one of the impressive things was he did it in more or less standard issue olive drab battle dress uniform from that era and a boonie hat. He did, to my knowledge, he did not really use, at least for that particular mission, any sort of ghillie equipment, which after a fashion makes some deal of sense from what I understand, given that area.
A lot of points previous too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is why it's relevant. But yeah, the kind of Southeast Asia and the tropics there can have very, very thick vegetation, and it's of course very, very hot and humid. So you do not want to be wearing too much more than you need to for any length of time. So I could see abandoning a ghillie suit for that reason alone. But also with a thicker vegetation, you can find good spots to lay and just kind of let the natural surroundings just be so dense that it kind of hugs you, so you're not really exposed in that regard. So yeah. At any rate, to get back on track to interesting. There.
That is cool to narrate.
Yeah, I did not know that either.
Contribution from moderator Evan. Hathcock also said he got a lot of guys using SVDs and SVTs, presumably that the targets were using those, because he caught the glint of brass off of the auto eject. That's why he never used an M21. Interesting.
Yep. I've definitely read that complaints that a lot of more dedicated snipers prefer not to use semi-autos because of several reasons relating to kind of that giveaway, whether it's the visual signature of ejecting a shell and kind of the glint of brass being caught, or the sound of the action and everything going, to also, even though you can make faster follow-up shots, it's for a dedicated sniper who is going after usually singular targets, it's not necessarily a good trade-off. For a designated marksman, completely different story. Sniper, not
different role.
Yeah, different role. Anyway, for sniper suits, kind of vaguely relating to that, the KZS suits were used from the 50s all the way through the 80s and 90s, and a little bit into the 90s from what I understand, but that's more or less where their service life ended. But they had a long service life, the KZS suits, for iteration. These guys, the Soviets used these for a long time, and they expanded their implementation, much like the Amoeba suit originally started off as a sniper suit, but then was issued to combat engineers and shock troops during World War II. The KZS suit fairly quickly found its way into use by a number of different special forces in the Russian military. There are pictures upon pictures, just albums of Spetsnaz in Afghanistan using KZS suits armed with an AKS or an AKMS with a PBS-1 suppressor or similar, and things like that. And I've even seen some with Panama hats and other such pieces of gear. And I believe I've seen it also used in the first Chechen conflict. I would need to dig through my computer to see if I have that picture on standby. But yeah, at any rate, the Russians were very fond of this thing. It's just a very quick, easy, relatively cheap way to camouflage your dudes, or provide some supplemental camouflage that they can, if they really want to and dedicated, can kind of continue to enhance it to fit the role. And on that note, continuing with that, kind of afterwards, as we all know, the Soviet Union stopped existing around 1991.
I've heard something about that,
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And with that, the new Russian Federation took its place. And that really shook up a lot of things. Private industry, capitalism is especially for a military-industrial complex, is very different than a centralized communist government for that. And that's a fascinating topic all of its own for me, just the shift in how the Russian military, especially the fledgling Russian Federation, that early 90s time period is extremely interesting to me because of the just variation in everything. The number of camo patterns exploded. The first and second Chechen War are huge examples of this, where you had a bajillion different patterns being used because they're all made by different companies. Yep, Tax Police is another example. Just there are so many interesting things.
Don't give away period. Episode 2.
Yeah, militarily. So many militarily.
We just got our explicit tag.
That are just tremendously interesting to me. They're fascinating from just an academic perspective. But with that in mind, while the Russian Federation would start to standard issue things, they didn't quite have. They would end up contracting to individual companies to purchase these uniforms, and they would do so in a way of saying, we like the design that you guys came up with. We're just going to purchase a bunch of your things to give to our guys, rather than something like more centralized, where we're used to the U.S. military doing, for example, where whether it's a firearm or camo pattern, whatever, they go and say, we will have a bunch of companies. We will lay down some criteria for something we want, have a bunch of companies present their designs to us. We'll run them through their figures, and we will pick the best thing of those submissions that we like, and we will award a contract to that company. So, and we will have them then make this thing forever and ever and ever for us, or at least a very long time, things like that. The Russian Federation didn't really do that, at least not with sniper suits. They just decided, hey, we like that, buy a bunch of that. Hey, we like that, buy a bunch of that. Hey, we like that, buy a bunch of that. It was not, they didn't hold any kind of centralized, unified design criteria for sniper suits. These were things that all these individual companies, ANA, Sponson, SSO, bunch of different companies were all coming up with different designs. Bars, just naming off a few just as they come to me, top of my head, we're coming up with all these different camo patterns and uniform kind of like different cuts of uniform and things like that. And it was just a free-for-all. It was bananas, especially for Russian special forces, because they were well-funded enough and had loose enough requirements where, much like a lot of special forces around the world, they're allowed to buy their own gear within certain specs. But Russian special forces were especially loose. They got to buy just about anything they wanted. So their loadouts varied a lot, even within the same squad. It was, again, fascinating, very interesting stuff to me. I love seeing all the different eclectic loadouts and anything. But at any rate, bringing that to the show and tell portion, you see stuff now that you can buy fairly easily in the form of more modern commercial sniper suits, which still follow the same idea, where it's just basically a very baggy uniform. In this case here, I have an SSO partisan suit is the cut of the uniform. This particular pattern is called SS Leto or SS Summer, because it is based off of the SS oak leaf pattern from World War II. A couple of variations as far as the dotting pattern and the color palette, but you can see if you compare them side by side, they are very, very similar. But they are still different. It's not, it's, I guess how I would describe it is saying it's a little more blended, a little bit more splotched, I guess. I don't own a set of oak leaf.
No, yeah, that's absolutely correct. The oak leaf is a lot more individual little dots rather than splotches. This is a sort of a similar.
Yeah, you can see it's kind of a little more blended, a little bit larger bits and patterns. It's overall somewhat similar, but it's a little more conventional than just a series of kind of polka dots.
Right, it's like a little more. I know what Tom's talking about, despite not being a camo expert, but this looks more like a 90s RTS map than.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes.
That's that's probably an easy enough description. But yeah.
So I figured out how to make you the big one, as you can see.
If you want a salient point here, say you could play a drinking game. You absolutely could make that a drinking game. It is, it's bananas. And personally, I love that. I absolutely love it. It's one of the reasons I'm so interested in that time period. It is fascinating to me, just all the logistics of that and everything. But anyway, getting back to the point, so Russians started buying a bunch of different patterns from a bunch of different companies. SSO, from what I've seen, seems to be the most popular for that. And they make a bunch of different camouflage patterns and a bunch of different camo patterns and things like that. One of the other ones, so the one I just showed now, the SS Leto in the partisan cut, it's quite popular and is especially famous for the 2004 Beslan hostage crisis. For those unfamiliar, it was a...
I'm not familiar.
Oh, it's so...
You are those.
Yeah. There's a lot more Wikipedia articles and things like that, but it was a tragedy where terrorists took a school hostage in Beslan in Russia, and they took an entire school hostage while it was in session, ran everybody, teachers, children, into the gym and booby-trapped the entire thing. And this was like 1,000+ children and staff for the school and things like that. And
what ostensibly, at least, motivated this particular attack? Is this
it
something where the
was
jury's still out, or is there even an official story?
there
Is
is
the
an
official
official
story
story.
largely
It was terrorists that it kind of led to it kind of led to the first Chechen War, if I remember correctly, if not happening kind of concurrently with it. It was Chechen separatists, I believe, were the ones who did that. Chechnya being a kind of a more or less a territory of the Russian Federation at that point, and things like that. At any rate, so there are lots of pictures from this crisis where you saw a lot of Russian special forces wearing those SS Leto partisan oversuits and things like that. Whether snipers or otherwise, just still, that was when you really saw that there are a lot of good pictures of it in action from that particular crisis. Yeah, it's a very sad story, and don't want to get too far off topic. But right around 2004 is when, and early 2000s to kind of the end of 2000s is the heyday for that particular suit and that particular pattern and things like that. Afterwards, a pattern you started seeing more commonly in a different uniform cut made by the same company was the Sumrak suit, which you will recognize the pattern. Is this.
Oh, even I know that.
I was about to say, gee, that looks a lot like the KZS pattern, and you'd be right, because it is the KZS pattern.
Verbatim?
Yeah, well, I mean, slight different color, but also it's a different fabric, so it's going to slightly different. But it is the same idea. It is kind of because it is from the 50s, even though it has a lot of blocky edges, it is not digital.
Okay.
It predates digital by quite some time. It is, I guess the terminology would be jigsaw kind of pattern. A lot of modern digital camouflage was done in response to the fact that it was becoming increasingly common to use digital photography to capture images of the battlefield for reconnaissance and things like that, from drones, planes, even just forward observers using digital cameras. And so by having kind of pixelated camouflage, those kind of blur more easily with a kind of a pixelated image and things like that was the idea why in the 2000s we saw the US use ACU and a bunch of other digital patterns just explode, and it became the newest, hottest thing, Russian using digital flora, things like that. But this predates that just happens to have that kind of geometric edges to its pattern. I don't know the exact justification for that, but nonetheless they have it. But because it's the more modern age, they started having a lot of neat little features with them. And I was remiss. I should have shown it because a lot of the features on the Sumrak are common to the partisan cut of uniform as well. They are 100% cotton and very baggy, so they breathe very nicely. They're some of my favorite uniforms to wear in the summer. They are fantastically comfortable, even aside from the camouflage value that they add. But they also, at many areas, like here, I'm not sure if I'm able to capture this terribly well in the...
Stand by, make me a big one again.
Yep. They have loops and things like that you're able to add supplemental camouflage to, whether you want to add ropes and tie downs, or if you want to try and shove pieces of branches or other things to kind of retrofit it.
Whereabouts is that on the uniform, Paul? Is that like left shoulder? I can't.
Yeah, that particular picture was right shoulder, but
Right shoulder.
If I kind of show it from the front, you also see it kind of on the inside of the shoulder. I believe they've got a few other locations. They've got some on the hood as well. Bunch of different things. Yeah. Let me see. Well, to be honest, it's not going to come out terribly well in the video anyway. But other nice things are, for example, on the Sumrak suit, it has a kind of a bug net incorporated into the hood, which is also just a nice little feature. So yeah, the Russians have loved this concept for decades and decades and continue to implement it. A bunch of different companies do it. And the Sumrak, that is still being used today very commonly. Not that the SS Leto partisan suit isn't being used today. The Russians, one of the beauties of collecting Russian stuff, if you wanted to do impressions, is the Russians never really throw stuff out. So they'll keep using stuff until they just don't have any more anymore. Yeah. So there are people stationed on like the side of Siberia that I bet still have PPSHs and Tokarev ammo for them. Because if you're not expected to like necessarily be fighting, but you need something, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Yeah, it's yeah. That said, I shouldn't say that this is again the only thing they do. They have a lot of different stuff. One piece of kit I would love to have from the Chechen War era is it's called a Goblin suit. It's more
fun one.
Yeah, it's a more analogous to I guess like kind of the leafy suits that you see now for like hunters and things like that.
Oh, I googled Russian Goblin suit. Actually, what looks like a lot of things actually came up.
Yeah.
Oh, well, for the low price of $489 on eBay, you can get one.
Yeah, I've had that
exactly.
2003
vintage.
Yep, I've had that particular link.
I see nothing about
you're
size.
Looking at wish listed for me. It's, I mean, nearly $500 is a bit steep. It's cool.
Is that not the going price?
I mean, yeah. Well, it's because especially the Goblin suits were issued in the same way that the Partisan suit was issued, where they bought them. Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Where they were bought from a contractor, not a centralized procurement system per se. But they were issued, they were widely used. Very, very cool. In particular, the Goblin suits are very interesting to me because they do something that I hope to implement in some of my homemade camo, where they use a mesh base with a camouflage print on it. In this case, that is a roster camo is the name of the Russian pattern on there for the base mesh layer. And then they have these 3D leaves sewn onto it to further break up the pattern. So there's a lot of elements at work there to break up texture. Mesh doesn't quite reflect light the same way as solid fabric and things like that. So that's disruptive for the texture and messes with your eye's sense of depth and things like that.
Yeah, this photo ain't exactly 4K, but I do see what you're talking about. That's really interesting.
And then the leaves themselves also are fabric with a camo printed pattern on them. I can't quite distinguish what it is, but I'm going to guess if it's 2001. It could be VSR 98. I don't think it's VSR 93. It's tough to tell, admittedly, from the pictures that I've seen. It might be kind of Russian imitation M81 Woodland, which is called Weishi sometimes, depending on the contractor that does it. At any rate, very cool. Lots of interesting little technological kind of ideas going into that. And very neat piece of kit. I'd love to have one at some point, finances permitting.
Say the least.
Yeah. So anyway, and then today, of course, a lot of people who are doing modern Russian impressions will see that FSB are buying basically almost like a modern hunting camo suits, just leafy suits. They're generally calling them, where they have patterns very similar to real tree printed on them and things like that. But they seem to be quite effective and things like that. you can type in FSB leafy suits and probably get a bunch of pictures of kind of what FSB is using to that end and things like that. And that's kind of where the current state of what I would call the Russian sniper oversuit is that you have a lot of recon units like 45th BDV, especially using Sumrak suits. A lot of MVD as well, still using partisan suits and things like that. And then FSB recon elements are using these leafy suits and things like that very commonly. But I found it a very interesting, kind of unique approach to this kind of recon camouflage pattern. Yep, exactly. That's what they have going on.
Yeah, very conventional looking. It definitely looks like it works.
Yeah. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But yeah. And again, it speaks to how the entire way that the Russians have kind of approached the situation, where they don't go through a central procurement system necessarily as far as designing, like, we don't have a national camouflage pattern that we use for these things. We just use whatever camouflage patterns that the individual companies that are making these things happen to offer. And things like that. We kind of and that's why they have a bajillion different camos as far as sniper suits are concerned. Russia has started to become a little bit better about their issued stuff with the Ratnik program that Putin implemented, and that's why you see a lot of stuff in Digital Flora now, and also the Syrian variant of Digital Flora and things like that. So yeah, they're starting to become a little bit more centralized, but the world of sniper camo and things like that is still very much a grab bag, which is very interesting to me, and has a history of being so since the 90s. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I have a few, one other one I forgot to grab that's kind of similar to a goblin suit, but not really. Give me a moment to grab that.
Yeah, no problem. Tom, remind me to find room in the budget for some intermission music.
Dude, just go royalty free.
I would say preferably the kind that aren't royalty free, so we can register and get kicked off of Twitch immediately.
Oh, great idea! I love it.
All right, and then last one that I have here is made by a company called Splav, and this is what they call this a shaman suit, which cut-wise is far less form-fitting than even the baggy oversuits, because the top is basically just a shawl. It just, here, let me kind of go out a little bit to explain this. It doesn't have sleeves. It just is a broad shawl, and it uses elastic loops to kind of get your hands. So you basically just kind of do like one of these deals and use that to keep it kind of on your limbs and everything. But it is very, very loose. And
it's like an entry-level cosplay strapping system. I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah. It's, because
respect
a lot of this is,
to an extent.
I mean, because a lot of this is contractors and not a centralized procurement system with guidelines, the quality of workmanship and other such things varies wildly, which only, again, adds to the intrigue and interest to me.
Right.
I mean, KZS suits were done with like gulag labor. So that's no joke. That's genuinely, they were, at least a lot of them were, and things like that. So they can vary in quality as well. Although that's not necessarily true. They're fairly consistent, but they're a simple one. It's hard to mess that up.
Okay. What was the very previous one we looked at with the foliage loops? A Sumrak, you called it?
Sumrak. SUMRAK.
Got it.
Yep. That one has the
one
loops.
with the bug screen as well. I was just laughing because I wanted to ask if those are particularly common and affordable nowadays. Because even just for backyard skirms and bushcraft, that sounds awesome.
they are great. I love my Sumrak suit, and you could.
That was the one you also said is quite breathable, right?
Yes. The partisan suit is also very breathable. Also worthy of note, the partisan suit also has a lot of similar elements to the Sumrak. It's a slightly different cut, but it also has these foliage loops and things like that sewn right into the uniform. It does also come with a, and it has some on the hood, much more visible, whereas the Sumrak does not seem to have loops on the hood. As a side note, and also the Partisan suit has mesh kind of lining the sides of the hood, presumably to allow better airflow or just unobstructed hearing. And things like that. The Sumrak, I don't believe, has mesh on the sides, but the Partisan suit does. However, the Sumrak has the built-in. You can unbutton it if you don't want the bug mesh, but it does include.
Not to interrupt, but Mike just jumped in.
Oh,
I think he's still getting sorted, but Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard something. No
Maybe.
rush.
Yep. Yeah. And then to just finish off real quickly, if you wanted to get a Partisan suit as well, they do offer like a supplemental bug mesh thing that's just just wear it over your head kind of a deal.
Oh, an aftermarket upgrade.
Yeah, it doesn't button into the hood nicely like the Sumrak does.
Oh, okay.
But they're very similar. They get a lot of common elements to them. Yeah, anyway, now that Mike's here, that pretty much concludes it. Thank you for enduring my long...
No, it's an outstanding lecture.
Everything.
You really have. This is obviously not my first one, but it was as riveting as the previous, and I'm excited to show our steadily growing. Introduce someone as knowledgeable as you about this topic as to our steadily growing audience. Meaning we had 6 viewers last time, and I think we've topped out at 2 so far tonight.
Whoa!
Using the term "growing" loosely. Tell your friends.
We're the fastest growing. We've grown 100% since our last time. We went from 1 to 2. We doubled.
Right.
We doubled our viewership.
Grown 100% a couple times in this past stream alone.
That's how they get you. You say we're the fastest growing stream.
Oh, right.
It's not wrong.
I was just talking about that earlier. In the same vein, I love the job ads. Up to X amount of dollars per hour. They don't ever, no one realizes the way our language works. Up to includes literally nothing. So if it was legal to pay you literally nothing, they could say up to $20 an hour and hire you for nothing and be intellectually honest about it.
Yep. Remember, kids, minimum wage means your boss is saying, if I could pay you less, I would, but it's illegal, so I can't.
Right.
Yep. Anyway.
Make do with, afford what camouflage you can afford. And let them do that.
And to that end, thank you for bringing us back on topic. To answer your question, Sumrak and Partisan suits can be had for about $100 for the full set, shirt and pants and things like that. I'd recommend them. They're very, very comfy. Sure. Pretty effective at just supplemental camouflage. They're not necessarily going to go as far as a ghillie, but they're very practical for a wide range of kits, whether you're pursuing sniping, designated marksman, or something else entirely. They are just fine, and the Russians use them as such. You will see a PKM squad automatic gunner in a Partisan suit or a Sumrak suit. It is not unique to snipers. That said, the Russians also have designated marksmen as a member of every squad and things like that, part of their doctrine and things like that. But that's a whole different thing. But it evolved concurrently to sniper suits and things like that, and it's very interesting to me.
100%.
But a topic I can go at length for another time. Mike just came in, and I don't want to... I've had the floor for long enough.
I mean, he was perfectly dialed in before. I don't know how he's still setting up his mic and camera, but no rush there, Haas. But no, Bob, that was an interesting angle you came at it from towards the end there. I think for your segment, we could turn it in at least towards the end to like a very, very hyper-focused airsoft gear review and talk about things from the perspective of their practicality in airsoft. This the camouflage we discussed tonight probably on one end of the spectrum, and opposite it, the 35-pound helmet we will discuss in future, at least publicly.
Yeah.
But
fair enough.
Neat stuff. What else is going on? Anything? Are these? I mean, we've talked about them publicly, and I'm sure you guys don't mind. KS-23 kits. Let's get into an ad read for ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Is that something you guys are still doing?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of.
Tom, you can partake now.
I mean, I can and I can't because that's absolutely not. That is 100% Paul's project.
Oh, okay. Just under your the banner of your operation.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair. To increase
You borrow Tom's
team
logo.
prestige and things like that.
Yes, in that sense, absolutely. I will take all the credit for what it's worth.
Fair. Well, I'm not gonna lie. Tom has been very encouraging and helpful in many ways for the project, though. So, yeah, appreciate teammate support and everything.
Of course.
Yeah, I first heard about those through the page, and they were really cool looking. Probably one
thanks.
of the
Yeah, no, I
one
mean,
of the more metal try shots out there.
honestly, we don't even really do any advertising for them, and people still just randomly like, yeah, I think not only
I'll get a
do
better ad
we do
read
like
finish by
negative
next time.
advertising for them. I'm pretty sure we actually took the post that was related to the original sales down, and people still just message the page. I'm assuming because we, yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of just like we're probably real high on the Google results just because I don't think anybody else has even attempted
like
it yet.
hath emergeth.
Yeah. How you guys doing?
Hey,
What's going on?
doing all right. How are you?
We're shilling for KS23 kids. You want to buy one?
No. What is it?
Fair enough.
What are we doing? What are we selling?
So,
What day is this?
what if I told you you could potentially hit 3 different targets in one trigger pull?
I've
Whoa.
already done that. You're selling me a broken AEG, aren't you?
I did not specify range.
Oh, Christ.
They're only for sale out of the trunk of my Sentra.
That's right. My 88 Sentra. The classic Sentra.
Yep. Meet me in the Denny's parking lot.
That's
Serious
right.
offers only. No low balls
What
on that
parking
one.
lot?
I know what I got.
Yep.
Sounds like trade-ins from my old store.
Oh my! Well, what's the you know what I got story? I vaguely remember it, and I have a better one. Can someone tell that again? It's in as much as we can without the CIA getting on us for identity emergence.
Am I
Doxing
telling the
somebody?
story or?
Do you have the?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
no,
I'm
not sure. I've heard
I
this
know what
one.
I got story. I remember it, but I don't.
All right,
As the kids
so
say, what is the
All right.
T?
Mike stories origins go.
I cringed at that.
Issue 0.
So I owned this store for a while, right? And we used to do trade-ins for like used stuff, which was hysterical. Guys would literally wander in with spring pistols, and they'd want to have like, I don't even know. Well, can I get $50 for it? And I'm like, it's a Springer, dude. Like, no. So we'd go through this whole rigmarole with everybody, and you know, we tried to treat everybody fairly, and sometimes it went well, and sometimes it went poorly. The first store, Frontier, we did really, really well with used stuff. Actually, we kind of opened the store with used stuff. And people would bring in these guns, and they'd be like, hey, can you look this over and tell me what it's worth? So we had to crack the mech boxes every time just to kind of verify, oh, I've got $600 worth of, you know, upgrades in this gun. And we'd open it, be stock. And so then we'd have this whole thing. Well, you guys took out all the good stuff. And I'm like,
looting guns.
not really. Like, you know, I mean, most people were great, honestly. Like 90% of the people, no problem at all. But then you'd get a couple people here and there that would be really weird about it. And it's
Worthy
just
of mention.
What's that?
I said worthy people that would be worthy of mention.
Yeah, but I'm not doing names. So you'd often get guys that bring in like, you know, well, I have this gun, it's in pieces. Can you look at it? Sure. So at the time I had a couple guys working for me as techs because I wasn't doing the tech work and because I was too busy being the face. And so the tech guys would like pull me back into the workspace and be like, have you seen what's in this gun? And I'm like, nah, man, what do you got? And they're like, so this one's filled with dog hair.
Oh.
I said, well, what do you mean filled with dog hair? So he would open up the mech box, literally open up the mech box, pull it open, and inside is just packed with dog hair. It might have been cat hair. I'm not that good about, you know, hair relations and reality, but like literally filled with dog hair. So it chopped up in the gears, like all over the place. Like, whoops, wrong side. That dog right there. Like that dog, if you shaved that dog and you packed it into your mech box, that's what somebody brought me once. And like I had to call the kid back and I'm like, look, I don't want to be that guy, but like, I don't really understand. Are you trying to sell this to me? Do you need me to fix it? And he's like, well, what's wrong with it? I'm like, well, it looks like your guinea pig crawled in here and died. So, you know, I mean, I can fix it. Sure. We'll clean it all up, put it all back together. Well, do you want to buy it? And I'm like, no, it's filled with dog hair. Like I'm sorry, guys. No, you know, I've got a dog. I like my dog. I don't need your dog hair to glue on my dog. On the field repairs, my favorite was definitely a young gentleman who had a clogged barrel and decided the best way to clear it was by ramming a stick through it. This was a full-length M16.
Always good.
Full-length M16, mind you. So he's got this stick he found that was actually not bad. It was fairly long. If it would have actually had structural integrity, not been a broken stick, he might have cleared the barrel. Instead, he just wedged that thing right in there like a boss. And then when he couldn't get it out, he decided to get a screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, put it in the end of the barrel, and then drive this onto the hood of his car. Yeah, so that barrel was ruined.
Just the barrel? Jesus.
Just the barrel. Yeah, just the barrel. I've seen absolutely exactly. It's the only way to clear the barrel. Yeah, see, he knows.
Oh, it was the only way. Yes.
Yeah, it was the only way.
In the same way that nuking it from orbit is the only way to be sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, Mike, not to interrupt if we're getting to it, but what was the I know what I got story? Was that guinea pig hair gun? Was that something he actually said?
Oh no. I've had people come in with
Is it even a particular story or more an era?
It was just it was an era. Yeah, it was honestly it was a very big era. We had guys that would bring in
Western New York Airsoft. Yeah.
Well, back when I had the first store, like Classic Army was making guns still, and JG didn't exist really. I mean, they were starting to do MP5s. So you had like Tokyo Marui, you had, Systemas, you had the Classic Army variety of Classic Army guns. And then you had like Wells, and I think was it JG? No. I'm trying to remember what the other one was. There was a G36 was their big thing.
I think that would be JG. Yeah.
No, it was before JG. UTG made a
bunch
of ANGs.
Yeah. For me, UTG means L96.
Yes.
Or MP5, yeah.
Or MP5s, yep. So, but these things were like $120, and the quality was all of $120. So they would come in and be like, well, I put a red dot on it, so it's worth $400. And so I had to show them how math worked. If you take 120 and you add 40, it's not equal to 400. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it does in some schools, but not the ones that I went to. So, and then they would be like, well, I want to trade for that PSG-1 TM that you've got $900 into. Is that cool? And I just kind of looked and I'd be like, yeah, of course that's cool. If you had $900, we're good. They didn't want to do that because that was more money than what they had. But, but a lot of guys would come in with this, oh, I have this gun and I've done all this modifications to it. And we'd look at it and be like, so you got a Type bore in there and I see you changed the bucking. That's a good start, like not upset. However, that doesn't make your gun an upgraded gun. Well, the barrel was, $45 from E-Vike. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but it's $45 and your gun still doesn't shoot right because your nozzle's broken and the tappet plate's broken and your motor doesn't spin anymore because you have, you put your car battery on it or something equally as brilliant. And, it just makes this, it sounds like a really angry cat in a box that you threw down the stairs. But it doesn't shoot BBs, but it's got a Type bore, so it's worth like $500, right? No.
Tom, this guy could have been like a proto explosive enterprises employee with a car battery in a backpack with an AEG.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
No, you wouldn't have hired him, Tom. I promise you. But that's
the old Star Wars expanded universe where the first Jedi, the first lightsabers with those big ass backpack mounted lightsabers.
There you go. Yeah.
Points directly at the face.
Crystals sticking out of the hilt.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I really did enjoy having the first store. It was definitely a lot better than the second store, but the first store was also fraught with its own problems. Anybody who says open an airsoft store, I'm going to tell you right now, don't fucking do it. It's just not worth your time. People are inherently nuts, and then compounded on that is, you deal with these people consistently because, I'm sure, as you guys know, I've known you both I've known all three of you guys for, I don't know, forever. It seems like you might as well be my goddamn kids. But that said, like you're the good kids. I have other kids. They're horrible.
Airsoft definitely attracts certain
types of people who are just
archetypes. Yeah.
being really charitable. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just it.
Direct quote. I'm not even trying to be slanderous, by the way.
No. God, no. Like honestly, some of my best friends I met through Airsoft. My best friends, and I'm,
same,
I'm 50, sure. And a lot of these guys, you guys included, are very near and dear to me, and I want the best for those people. However, I've met some really interesting folks that, like If they were on fire, I'd try and put them out with gasoline.
For sure.
There's a handful. There's just a handful of them. Like, they're not that bad. And, you know, the nice thing about, you know, today's modern technology is if we don't like somebody, you can just delete them. So, you know, you'll block them on Facebook.
Or unfriend them on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. You know, I don't really go through and, like, defriend people anymore. I just throw them on mute. Because like, getting rid of them, they're just going to ask to be my friend again. And it's just easier to say nothing than have to keep denying their request over and over. That said, there's like 3 people out there, and if they're watching this, they know who they are. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, like, you know, what you run into. But as far as, like, you know, weird things that as far as, like, you know, things that walked into the store, I had a dude walk in with a duffel bag full of military gear. Very close cut sides, very flat top. I'm not going to say he was in the service, but he definitely was in the service. And he had a whole bunch of, like, things that you shouldn't sell to people you don't know. And basically dumped the box out and went, "Hey, what will you give me for this?" And I was kind of like, "Well, how about $100? Like, I'm figuring maybe." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." I'm like, "Oh, this is definitely hot. Great. Now I got to try and figure out some way of getting rid of all this shit." You know, I've had warranties on $7 springers. We carried literally like $3 springers that literally would shoot maybe a dozen times and they'd break. They were cute. They were funny. They were not, like, on the thing. I had a sign that said, "These will break very quickly." That's why they're $3. And, you know, this kid came in one day with, I don't remember, $15 or something, and bought 5 of them for him and his buddies. And then, like, I don't know, maybe an hour, his mom comes back really angry at me. And she was like, "Well, I don't understand. I mean, they all broke." And I'm like,
yeah, it says they're right on the sign.
They come in a plastic bag. Let's start there. They come in a plastic bag, and they literally have, the ammunition came in little sheets, and all the BBs were stuck together.
Oh, and you had to, like, break them off.
You had to break them all off and then clean them as you went, which nobody did, of course. They just broke them off, put them in the gun, and then it jammed and it broke. Shocking. And so, you know, I would explain to people, like, you know, if you're going to do this, I have literally $2 bottles of like 1,000 rounds of cheap, I think they're Golden Ball BBs. And, like, literally they're garbage BBs, but they'll fire fine through these particular guns if you buy the ammo. Well, no, they were picking them off the ground and reusing them, and then the kid was putting rocks in there and shooting rocks at each other. Well, it was mostly round
rocks.
gravel, actually, from a fish tank. Fired pretty good through some of them. I only know this because the gun itself she brought back in for me to fix. Quite literally was filled with gravel from the inside of a fish tank. And so, of course, my first question was, I'll be that guy, I guess. What was your son shooting through this gun? Shocked look. And so she's like, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, of course you don't. Your 14 or 15-year-old son has, what, you know, a little tiny stupid pistol that's painted gold. I mean, bright gold. Like, these were not, like, the barrel was literally a piece of red plastic, and the shell was just gold. And so when you pulled it back, it looked like this big red. You can let your imagination run out. And so, but then he's putting gravel through it and trying to shoot his friends, and the gun jammed, and she couldn't figure out why. And so, you know, I got a cleaner rod and I got all the gravel out of the barrel for her. And I said, "Why don't you buy him some BBs and a better gun?" So she bought the $15 gun because that was the top of the line for her budget. Yeah. She's a big spender. And she bought 2 things of ammunition. And next thing I know, there's an arms race going on in the back neighborhood because all the kids were coming to my store. I didn't realize this. Everybody came to the store and was literally like, so yeah, my buddy was here 2 days ago and he bought this gun. What's better than that gun? Well, I've got the spring shotgun. Okay, bought it. Next guy comes in. "Hey, so my buddy bought a spring shotgun. What's better than that?" And I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, so I started an arms race in Kenmore. That was kind of cool.
Incredible.
Yeah. One of my minor accomplishments in my life, you know, was starting a gun war in Kenmore. But yeah, it was, I mean, I've seen so much come through with people bringing in different stuff. And, you know, well, my dad was trying to figure out how to do XYZ. And I'm like, "Yeah, what does your dad do for a living?" Just out of curiosity. "Oh, he's a lawyer." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, this is a mechanical problem, not a legal problem. So you would take it to somebody that would be like, if your car breaks down, you don't go to your attorney. I mean, unless it's a lemon law thing, which, okay, fine. But typically speaking...
Well, it is a lemon law thing. I've only had it for 15 years, Mike.
Right, yeah. And I know what I got. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting to see kind of like how people react.
I'm changing the stream title to that.
I know what I got. But yeah, I mean, it's funny to me to see, like, you know, kind of like what these guys would come in with. And then, you know, and then I had legitimate guys come in and they'd be like, hey, I'm working on the XYZ project and I've been at it for 2 months and I'm having problems getting the sector gears to line up. And I'm like, all right, bring it in and I'll show you how to shim it. And then we'd go through, and that would be the first step is, you know, you have to shim these things. Yeah, there's moving parts that have to align. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Oh, well, I was just going to put some dog hair in it. And so, yeah, what the hell? So we would have to, you know, all these problems all the time. And it was fun to me because I really enjoyed helping people out who really were into it. And especially if they were people who came out to the fields and stuff and played with us. Like, obviously, they took preferential treatment. But, I mean, like, I had a guy that literally just collected, you know, odds and ends, like really weird things. When I think it was Garter made a steel and metal kit for the TMAKs. This guy came in and he ordered a TMAK with the full Garter kit. And it's probably still on the dude's wall. Like, he bought it with everything included. It was like $600. And I was like, are you going to come out and play? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, I don't want to know. Like, I just don't want to know. There's certain liability, like legal things, like as a store owner, you just don't need to know. So we just kind of let it go.
Plausible deniability.
Exactly. Then the guy showed up a little while later. He ordered a Sun Project M40. Which was a bolt action. Sun Project was a company. It's probably was before you guys' time. They were like,
we know Sun Project. Come on.
Oh, that's right.
They made those M203s and all that jazz. Yeah.
As everyone will someday discover, Tom only looks 14.
That's correct.
Right. He's actually 74. Don't let him fool you. He's actually been doing this for 100 years. But in any case, so he bought the Sun Project M40, and then bought, like, I don't even remember. It was like $1,000 in parts. So it had like this upgraded spring and the piston and the sears and all of this stuff for it. This gun shot better. It was a spring powered gun, but it was like solid. The stock was wood, like the barrel. I mean, it was heavy, and it had like an internal barrel with all the spacers, and it had a fluted end, so it wouldn't have any problems with the BB shooting out of it. And the hop up system for it was this incredibly complicated, like 3-pulley system. Like, I mean, the thing shot great. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely shot great. And he dumped probably easily, like the gun itself was like $500 or $600. He dumped another $1,000 into it. And then I found out he's never actually shot it ever. Like, he took it home and he literally just puts it on the wall. So he must have bought, I don't even know how many guns he bought through us. It was a bunch to the first store. Like, we were open for about a year and a half. And during that year and a half, he must have bought probably a dozen guns. So every month or so he'd roll in and he'd be like, hey, can you order an XYZ? Let me go see if I can find it. So I'd look up on my vendors and see if I could find it. And if I could, I'd get it for him. He had bought a FAMAS. I don't understand why, after working on a bunch of them over the years. Like, they were just awful guns.
Creaky misery for sure.
Yeah, like as soon as you brought it to your shoulder, it went and you're like, what am I doing with this thing?
Yeah.
And then it had that Gen 1 mech box with that really weird motor that was always underpowered, so you could never do like anything above a 100 spring. Yeah, and then the hop up was weird. Like, Anywho,
TM was still getting the kinks worked out at that point. Yeah,
I mean, they made the Uzi. Like, the TM Uzi is the pinnacle of like ingenious design. A rear firing air nozzle, like the whole thing is wild. But yeah, and then they made the FAMAS, and I'm like, but why? Especially because they made the AUG and the P90, which were so much better as far as like construction, durability, use, like upgradable.
Yeah, seriously.
You remember dual sector gears?
Oh, that's still a thing. Yeah, people still do.
People do that? Okay. So I had a guy who did a P90 with dual sector gears with an M150 spring from Systema. Yeah, that was fun. So it jackhammered at like 440 FPS with threes with a dual sector gear. The problem he ran into was he couldn't find pistons that could keep up with it.
The problem he ran into was that his MED was
cored.
But your piston becomes reloadable at that point.
Yeah, not an indoor gun. Not an indoor gun. But really funny to watch him hose people because they'd get hit 95 times. You know, he pulled the trigger once and you get hit 100 times. You know, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
At 400 FPS.
440 FPS. Yeah, so he couldn't use it anywhere, but he had this ridiculous toy. Yeah, we've seen that. People would come in. I'm like, they want to put a 200% spring in, and I'm like, well, you're gonna be shooting like, I don't know, like 500, 600 FPS. What are you using that for? Oh, I was gonna use it at your field, and I'm like, you do realize we have rules, right? And they're like, oh, so how high can I go? And I'm like, well, you have a 120S in it, and that's it. Like, we have low FPS rules, so nobody gets hurt. I didn't want to have to pay for people's teeth and eyes and safety gear and stuff. So we stopped, we kind of made it so that was kind of silly. But, the downside was other fields allowed higher FPS depending on what you were doing. So if you wanted to be like a DMR or a sniper for another field, you could get an upgraded gun and run with it. And I ended up having to do like a lot of really weird tech work for people. Other stores locally and in Rochester also did tech work too back then. So it was kind of nice because you always had somebody you could go to. If you didn't like one guy's work, you could go someplace else. Now, of course, Buffalo has no stores. So there's that. Rochester, I think you got what? Performance Hobby still.
That's pretty much it.
No,
yeah.
River City's still doing stuff.
Oh no, they have a pro shop. That's true.
Yeah, I don't know if they do tech work or not, but they definitely have a store there, which is cool.
They were working on something when I showed up a few weeks back. Yeah, I don't know if that means tech work as such, or if they were just helping.
I don't know. I'm not allowed to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a list of fields I'm not allowed to go to. Because I'm a competitor and nobody likes competition, I guess. But yeah, it was interesting to see, like, again, people would bring in the weirdest things. When they first came out with the real sword stuff, which I know Paul's a big fan of. Real Sword brought out that weird one with the mag went in the back. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like one of these like compact,
whatever. It's one of those Chinese guns.
Yeah. So they had that brought out, and I had a guy bring one in, and I was like, "Oh Jesus, I've never seen one of these before." And he's like, "Well, I saw the YouTube video. It doesn't look too hard." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Like, let's look at the YouTube video." And I'm looking at it, and it had like a really complicated like safety system to it. So like when you put the safety on, or you choose like semi or full auto, there's like a whole set of gearing in it. Yeah, there's a whole set of gearing to it or something.
Oh, wild.
And it's on the outside of the box, and none of it's secured. It just kind of stays in place because the plastic from the box held it in place. And yeah, that fell apart quick. So we ended up having to like basically redo this guy's gun for free because all the shit just went everywhere. And I'm like, oh, that's not good at all. Look at me.
Damn it.
The gun.
Yeah.
Cool. The SVD, which Paul has a lot of experience with too. It's got that planetary gear system, like the system of PTW, sort of, but it's got like 4 gears, right, Paul? Was it 4 gears? Yeah. So it's got 4 gears in it, and when you first open it up and you look at it, and the mech box is like,
Paul, you got to put your mic down, by the way.
It's huge. Go ahead.
You're muted as well.
Who is?
Paul.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Nope.
Is your mic on in this hotkey M? You might hit it on accident. Your little toolbar at the bottom, let's say.
Oh.
Well, we can see Paul, and he looks beautiful.
He is visible for sure.
Keep trying.
Nope.
What'd you do?
Nope. You broke it.
All right. Well, in any case, so I'll let Paul figure that out, and I'll keep going.
Maybe come back if you have to. I'm sure that's all it is.
Yeah. So the SVD is a pretty complex mech box. Not as bad as the what do you call it? The one of the PTWs. The PTW Mech box is really wild.
It's definitely up there though. Yeah.
But I've worked on both of them, and the SVD I really enjoyed because the amount of torque that it could apply to a piston was really, really high. So you could do a lot of really cool stuff with it. You could really get it so it actually shoots really far. Paul, you want to try to talk?
No.
Bueno.
Not working.
Yeah. So we did work on all kinds of stuff that people would bring in.
Oh, there we go.
Wait.
No?
Yep. Good now.
We're good. Okay.
Yep. All right. Cool. So, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me to see kind of like the different guns and stuff that they bring in, and if we didn't know how to do it, I just tell them, look, I've never worked with this before, but give it a shot. And usually people were like, well, I want somebody who's a certified tech, and I'm like, yeah. So their system used to offer a program where you could go to their school. I don't know if they still do anymore or not, but they used to have like a place in Ohio, I think it was. The guys.
Somebody tried to do that in the U.S. Tried to get like a certification thing going after that, and I don't think it ever really came back to life.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a shame because I think it would be a cool thing for like.
Smart idea. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, you can pick up most of the stuff yourself just by tearing apart enough guns and not being able to fix
Of
them.
course.
I mean,
But yeah, it would be
because
cool to actually be
literally
able to
every
go to
single
someone
tech is uncertified at this point.
credentialed.
Yeah. But that said, it's weird to me to see like, you get guys bringing in a bag of parts. I've got this bag of parts.
Make me a gun.
I think this was everything in there. And I'm like, how many guns have you worked on? And they're like, this one. And I'm like, great. Okay. So then I'm laying out all the pieces and I'm like, well, where's this? Well, I don't know. Well, where's these screws? Oh, I lost all the screws. You lost all of the screws?
Every screw.
Every one of them. All gone. And so then we'd have to try and like dig through our parts bins to try and find screws, or we'd have to get a new mech box ordered or whatever, and then we'd have to try and put it all together. Worked on gas guns. I mean, we have a lot of inside jokes with our group, obviously, about all the things that we've seen over the years, like the napalm BBs and like just all of the ideas that were pitched to us over the years about what they wanted to do with their airsoft guns. And a lot of the stuff, honestly, like we had a good laugh about some of the stuff, and some of the stuff just absolutely scared me. Like, your logic process to get to napalm BBs was what exactly? And they're like, well, we doused them in gasoline, and then we put like a lighter at the end of the gun, it would shoot flaming BBs. And I'm like, okay, so
but
let me
why?
start at the beginning and explain to you how wrong that is and how that won't happen. So I don't know if you ever put BBs in gasoline. I can tell you from experience, they'd melt.
Yeah.
Whoa.
They slag right out.
because it's styrene. Yeah. Fun random facts. That's how you can actually make napalm at home is if you pour.
Shh.
That's what to say. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna go from one viewer to zero.
Stay
Really
on you would
fast.
stay.
Fair.
And,
Understandable. But Mike knows exactly what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
I know exactly what you're
Do
talking
not
about.
do this.
I've read the same
Oh,
book.
that reminds me. Speaking of getting canceled, what's the beer of the week, Tom?
I'm actually drinking cider right now. Completely
Close
ruining your
enough.
entire bit.
Alcoholic cider or non-alcoholic cider?
Oh,
Alcoholic cider.
okay.
Adult
Red's
cider.
Apple Ale, the gold standard.
Technically that is an ale and not actually a cider, believe it or not.
Oh, fuck off.
Allegedly that is indeed an ale, but no, it's a Blue Barn. Basically, I think they only make one or two at this point. They're like a little micro cidery out in Rochester. That's pretty good.
Respect. I'm not familiar, actually. Dead ass. Even as
I've
someone
never heard of them either.
tangentially
I
into the biz.
just saw that they were out there and had my mom pick me up a couple cases while she was visiting.
Well, shouts out to them. If you're a relative local, like 95
There you go.
of
Yeah,
our
grab
audience long
a
term, shoot them some
4-pack.
business.
They're
Yeah.
delicious and brand new, I think. So
We got a second ad read. We're not even 2 hours in, guys.
there you go.
Oh no, we're
Does it count as an
advertising
ad read if we're doing it for free?
Yes.
Well, eventually we might get royalties. So yeah, they might be like, look, you guys,
$5,000 for the
you
local.
guys got a whole bunch of alcoholics started in Buffalo drinking our stuff, so we're gonna throw you $500 or
There you go. That
probably
counts.
not.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I
Can't
mean,
afford a
it's
mixer.
the flaming BBs thing was a really big thing, and it was a good joke for a long time. And
Really big thing, meaning you heard it multiple times.
No,
it's like
it was
a
pretty
group-
much one person,
group
but then the
meme.
rest of us
Yeah.
couldn't let it go because it was
it's
hysterical.
a hilarious bit. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it was like one of those things. Like we, to this day, like if you get some of the old timers out, there's a whole bunch of us going to Mirage, and so for the Mirage crew, like I got a lot of guys that haven't been out in the field in 10, 15 years. Hondo's coming out, Brody's coming out.
Oh, nice.
I haven't seen these guys on the field in a really long time, so I'm super pumped. But in any case, the first thing Alex Brody asked me was like, "Hey, dude, is there going to be any napalm?" And I'm like, "Read the comments." If we
We'll
pay
settle
you
for-
$500,
Guys,
so you never
Can we
mention
pay,
your Mirage.
it's an anti-advertisement. I love it.
You guys
Great
tell
idea.
me, but
we should
I
start
wanna-
casually mentioning. We should start casually name dropping every product.
Yeah.
It's like I'm qualified as someone who dated a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'll settle for 250.
There you go.
It's like me going to the strip club, People are there throwing money at me, put my clothes back on. But yeah, so I mean, it became kind of a running joke, and it was funny to me because, like, even to this day, like I tell people about the napalm BBs, and they're like, "What? What did this kid ask you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So here's the idea, right? Here's a sales pitch. I really want to have the ability to shoot flaming things at my friends in the woods.
In August, obviously.
Well, I mean, August, September. Let's just wait till it's really good for kindling. And then
for background, fireworks are illegal in New York.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's why Roman candles wouldn't have been the first go-to.
Right.
Yeah. Although, let's talk about Roman candles and 203 launchers. So there was a gentleman who packed a 203 with 3 Roman candles mid-game and thought it would be okay to shoot somebody with said Roman candles out of his 203. So he lit it, he fired it, I saw it, and I'm like, dude, point that at the ground and stomp those out as they come out, because if you don't, I'm going to have to murder you. And so, I mean, we had a lot of land back then, so like murdering people wasn't a real problem. It's just digging holes. And, there was always new kids, sure, yeah. I'm like, hey, go build me a trench here. Why? Just build a trench, I'm going to throw Bob in there and he's going to die. And so, I mean, I don't think we ever lost anybody per se, like actually lost them in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, like at the end of the weekend, bodies were accounted for. There was never any missing bodies that I know of.
Yeah.
Unless they were willing, like Remy or Cookie.
They're pan-dimensional entities, so you never really know when
they're not even. They're not even real. I honestly, I think that Cookie is like my Tyler Durden. I don't think he actually exists.
That checks out.
He's just an idiot. And everybody else humors me when I'm not being Cookie, when I'm Haggerty. Like they're like, "Oh, it's Haggerty because you're not being stupid and doing crazy things drunk." And then when I do crazy things drunk, they're like, "Oh, it's Cookie," and I'm like, "Oh, that makes more sense." Although it is kind of awkward for my wife. Anywho, but yeah, I mean, we never lost anybody due to like negligent stupidity. Which I mean, honestly, the fact that we were able to do as many games for as long as we did on so many different fields over the years blows my mind. Just absolutely. How am I not in jail? Like, like people's parents.
Seriously.
Like, I have questions. All right, I'm just saying I have questions, mostly about all of your parents.
That's a wild one to me. I've asked about that. So there was definitely some questionable calls that were made over the years.
Like parents would show up, and I'd be like, the questions were usually something along the lines of, so if I leave my child with you for 3 days, I only have to give you $25 and leave food for him? And I'm like, or her. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how that works. And they're like, here's your $25. See ya. Bye.
Cheapest daycare ever.
And they would like literally throw their kid's shit out the window as they're driving away. There you go. Good luck, kid. Bye. And then like the next day I'd realize why the parents were so happy to leave their child with me, because their child was awful. Like, diminutively every aspect of their life, just awful. And, again, not mentioning names because there was a lot of them. A lot of 15 to 17-year-old children that were left in my care with absolutely zero background checks, didn't even ask me my phone number.
Wild.
Just didn't care. Oh, you want my kid? He's yours. Bye. And they would literally, like, I couldn't stop them. Yeah. And it was wild to me to see, like, I guess it's just, it was cheap enough that it was like daycare for the kids the weekend.
Yeah.
And we would like put them to work building stuff and digging holes, doing all sorts of menial labor stuff. And everybody loved it. And I'm like, this is the weirdest cult thing I've ever run. And the other ones weren't quite as successful. But, we had this fat man thing going for a while where we were trying to like wear marshmallows. Never mind.
Didn't work out.
It really didn't go over. It was just me standing around in the park with marshmallows on. It was awkward. But the airsoft thing locally, really, I mean, I'm amazed all the time. Amazed at how well it is. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, we'll get to that. Just amazed at how many people would come out and their folks would just basically abandon them in the woods with some strange fat dude who was drinking a beer when they showed up. I mean,
we're camping.
Fink was my favorite. One of the kids got dropped off. Huh?
It's cheap, it's quick, and it's legal.
Allegedly.
The trifecta.
So yeah, Fink came out and he was watching me interact with a parent, a mother to be exact. I'm wearing a shirt that has a giant rooster on it that said, "I might be fat, but my cock is huge." I'm holding a beer and a cigarette. It's 3:30 on a Friday. Mother says, "Do I leave him with you?" And I said, "I don't care." And she said, "Okay." Gave me money.
Cool.
Kicked the kid out and just drove away. So
top notch.
You had that look. trustworthy.
I have the same look, and no, I don't. Like, I look shady like the day is long. Like, I'm smoking a cigarette with a beer in my hand, and the mother's
Dog's
like,
enjoying this
perfect.
one too.
You'll be a great babysitter. Good luck with my kid. Bye. I don't get it. But that said, it was interesting. The dynamic was very interesting. We had a lot of good people back. We still have good people, but back then when I had, Mr. Andy and Jimmy and Pete Bessie was involved, and people who weren't
like a
awful.
fucking Sopranos fan fiction.
It was close. It was close. I told you about the orphanage, right? Different episode. So yeah, but I mean, it was wild to me to see parents just wanted to get rid of their kids. Paul was one of them. He used to get dropped off occasionally, I think, or your brother brought you, I think, right, Andrew? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was younger.
Yeah, my brother was younger than me.
Oh, that's right. He was younger than you. You are the older one. Damn it.
Yeah, no, it's an easy mistake because he outgrew me very quickly. My brother's 6'3" now and 200 pounds, captain in Marine Corps, and that trend goes back to he was my height by the time he was 14, and it just kept going from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. Seeing watching Paul grow up. I think you were probably 16, 17 when I met you.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I was 15
Tom,
in my first game.
I was fucking 12 when you met me.
Yeah.
Aren't you still 12?
It was like 3.5 years ago.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Tom, listen, you're just 12 with 17 years experience at this point.
That's right. Been stacking that up.
Yep.
Right.
So yeah,
qualified 12-year-old.
Correct. Very overqualified 12-year-old.
He's got a degree, man. Why are you a 12-year-old? He's really smart. You see the stuff he can build? He's a genius. But yeah, it's funny to me. He's a prodigy. Honestly, I think on some levels he might be a prodigy.
Yeah, I agree.
So we did games. We had people come out. Obviously, we discussed kind of all the antics and the stupidity came with that. But a lot of work went into doing the scenarios and designing the games and trying to figure out, how to make things work. Hivemind is literally still my hero personally. The games that he designed, they were always top notch, over the top, in depth, tons of things for the players to do. And you'd post up all these rules, and I'm going to hit on fire first, doggo, and then I'm going to stop, I promise. So his comment was, how have you not mentioned multicam bottoms yet? So we had this whole thing where we're going to do tan versus green. And this kind of stuck with pretty much everybody who who plays Airsoft nowadays usually has
sounds pretty complicated.
Yeah, you could think, right? So it would be well, what if I wear green pants and tan top? Okay, so it's tan versus green, so choose one. Well, can I wear, jean bottoms with green shirt? Fine, you'll be on the green team, but I want to be on tan. So then wear something tan. Well, I've got this blue shirt that I could wear with my blue jeans. Can I be on tan? What part of tan can't you get? Well, I don't own any khaki pants. Okay, so do you get a khaki t-shirt? They're $6 at Walmart. Well, I can't go to Walmart. I don't even want to know why you can't go to Walmart, but okay, fine. Get your sister to go buy you a fucking shirt, whatever. And then it was it de-evolved from there. Well, what pattern is lizard? How the fuck would I know that? I've never even seen a lizard pattern. Oh, well, the Italians wear it. Of course they do. Of course they do. I've been to Italy with the military, and I've seen them in action. You got me. Okay. Then you can wear lizard. Well, is it green? Well, how the hell would I know that? Shoot me a picture. So that's kind of how this whole thing started. And then one of the guys from Rochester, who was Jamie, I love Jamie very dearly. Jamie would rephrase questions in a way that would make us all giggle, uncontrollably and angrily giggle.
This sounds
so we were like, okay, so you can wear multicam; it's counted as tan. Well, I want to wear multicam bottoms. Okay, then wear the bottoms. Can I wear a green shirt? No, Jamie, you can't. Well, what if I just wear my multicam bottoms and no shirt? That's fine. You'll be tan.
In town.
Yeah. Well, what if I wear it in town? You'll still be in tan. Well, what if I wear it in the woods? Well, it's still tan. Oh. Well, what about 203s? Can I bring a 203? Yes, of course you can bring a 203. Okay. So if I wear my multicam bottoms in town with a 203, am I on green? No, Jamie, you're still on tan. Oh, well, what if I wear? This is kind of the whole thing. So he would take this
briefing
bad
flowchart.
and just
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
oh my God,
Yeah,
dude, like
leave
why?
nothing to chance.
So it would always be like, we'd post up something about, well, we're doing a drill, civilian versus non-civilian. So if you're wearing camouflage, you're on one team. And if you wear no camouflage, you're on the other team. Okay, cool. So I'll wear my multi-can bottoms and I'll be on the team with no camouflage. Yes. And he literally has never owned multi-cam in his life. So like this was an ongoing thing of point of discussion for like every op. Literally for every op for like an entire 2-year series where he wouldn't, and he didn't even bother coming out after a while. He would just post up on the forums and be like, so if I show up, can I show up with my multi-cam bottoms and a 203 in town? And I'm like, you gonna come out this time? He's like, no, I just want to know if I can. Yeah, you're on the tan team. Well, I'm not coming. That's fine. He's always slayed me. Really, really funny dude. Yeah, this was yeah, exactly. This was all for No Man Left Behind, the first one we did back in 2007.
Oh boy,
Copterland, and nobody owned multicam because nobody had it. You couldn't get it yet. It just came out. It was like you couldn't. It was only Cry Precision. It was only for the military, and like if you could buy a set, it was like $600 or $700 or something ridiculously expensive.
Jeez.
And he was always threatening to show up in his multicam bottoms, not his top, just his bottoms. And I'm like, all right, dude, like you do you, man. This would be great. But yeah, it's interesting to me, like, again, between the store, between running different stuff. Yes. Being able to watch kind of like, the player base, like, what was I think it was, I don't remember who said it. He said, if you look at the human population and you think half of them are pretty smart and half of them are really stupid, you're wrong because they're all stupid and the half of them are stupid and you think they are. And that kind of applies to a lot of airsofters, unfortunately, because
George Carlin, picture the stupidest person you know. Half of them are stupider than that.
Yeah, and then you don't notice it because they cover it well,
right?
And so I mean, there's a lot of that, kind of happens in airsoft, and it's a lot of things like like we came up with some really cool ideas for like different guns. I made a FOM 16 with Derek Reihe at Lead Pockets once, and it shot really well actually for the absolute just awfulness that it was. There are some pictures floating around. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I think I know where I can find a picture of that.
Yeah. We fielded it at Dusk's house for one of his games that he had in his backyard area that his parents had out in Elma. He had this beautiful little area in the back, and we went out there. We played a couple times. It was actually a lot of fun, and his folks were really nice people. They let a bunch of crazy older people like me and my friends come out to their field to shoot their 16-year-old kid. No long-term ramifications. I'm sure he's fine.
Does.
Oh,
yeah, none. No long-term scarring, no emotional issues, no counseling needed. But yeah, we went out there and we brought this FOM 16 out, and it had the front end of an M16. Like basically, the chassis was an M16.
I got it.
Oh no, let's see this thing.
Oops, wait.
Green lighting screen share, making you the big one.
Yeah,
big one.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, we built that.
That looks like it would be at home and as like an 80s sci-fi movie prop.
It actually was a fantastic setup. Like, yeah, there you go. So if you look closely at it, you'll notice the duct taped or the electrical taped drum mag.
Yeah, that's
we carved out the actual mag well. I don't remember why. It was for a different project we did. And so then the back end, if you look at it real closely, you'll see the FAMAS, obviously the top handle that goes back. The whole entire lower is just gone. And the back end was bolted on to a couple pieces of aluminum that we ran into the butts, the actual rear end, with a screw into the M16's mech box. Mm-hmm. So it's basically just an oversized M16 VN that we added all this awfulness to it. And it's kind of awesome. It really was just absolutely horrifically beautiful. It shot really well. It's on par with the rest of the TM stuff because it basically was a stock TM with a drum mag and FAMAS parts.
Note the very high tech battery connection that we have going here into the stock.
Oh yeah,
that's
you
key.
See it right there. Yeah,
very tactical.
Well, that had a 9.6 battery in it, an old Nike had. and I couldn't get it out of the damn stock, so we just put the wiring harness where you could get to it to plug it in to charge it again.
There you go. Just have the whole stock.
Invention.
Yeah,
Mother
internal
invention,
battery.
right?
Once again, very high tech and forward thinking.
That's hysterical. I see. Yeah, TDS has got it up there. It's fucking funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those things. Like we did it on a whim, kind of like, hey, well, let's do something stupid. I got a bunch of FAMAS parts. We're never going to put the FAMAS back together because it was one of the ones without a hop up, which was actually a thing. I can't remember which company made it. Unicorn Hobbies, I think. Maybe UH. I can't remember.
Something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, it had no hop up, so it had a range of about 60 feet, maybe if you kind of tilt up a little bit,
Right.
But yeah, it was really funny. So we killed that gun literally because the motor was garbage and it couldn't even pull an 80% spring like a standard system of 80%, which is what stock is for Tokyo Marui. So it's like a 300 FPS gun. So we murdered the actual gun and then stuck it on this M16 because we were bored. So we did a lot of stuff like that. We never got as creative as the Explosive Enterprises guys have, because you guys have taken what we did to the next logical level where it actually looks good, performs well, and shoots, as opposed to ours that were like, yeah, well, most of the time, the flamethrower systems you guys have made are fantastic.
Those are pretty, yeah. Those generally work pretty well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you had them we had them that little that marmot tank that you guys had. That
oh
was
yeah,
amazing.
I think it was a riot.
Yeah, you just roll in and just wah, and everybody's dead. And, yeah, as an admin, I'm like, this is kind of cool. I mean, this isn't a time before tag and grenades. This is a time before like HPA stuff was not a thing. So we just had the AEGs to play around with. Either you had a bolt action sniper, or I don't even think you had. Did we have shotguns back then? They were single shot, not tri shots, and just basic AEGs. And Classic Army had their sport line models that came out, and they were nice, cheap, $100-ish AEGs, and they were okay. They weren't. I mean, I wouldn't say competitive, but they were a decent starting point. Sure. And then UCG made a bunch of AEGs. They had an MP5 and a G36, and I can't remember something else. So it was actually really kind of cool to see, the development of all the different guns that have come out now. I still prefer old guns to the new guns, but that's just me. I like my Western Arms pistols very, very much, and I like my Tanaka rifles. And the downside is, you take them out to like different games. We went out to Battle at the Depot there that Masato put on.
Oh yeah,
really cool AO, like really cool. Lot more walking than I wanted to do. I'm a pretty fat dude, and that was a lot of walking. But we went to Chrono. Josh and I went to Chrono the Car 98s we have. There's a pair of Car 98s. And yeah, so I adjusted the bolt all the way down on one, and the other one was kind of in the middle. So we chrono the first one, and the guy's like, "Yeah, what are you shooting this with?" And I said, "Well, they're I think they were 3.8s or 3.7s or something like that." And he's like, "Well, this thing's shooting like a joule and a half." And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds about right." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean that sounds about right?" I'm like, "Well, this has got to be the one that's turned down." And he goes, "What do you mean turned down?" I'm like, "You don't know what you're holding, right?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "That's a Tanaka pre-ban. Years ago they were adjustable bolts, and it would adjust the spacing for how much gas would fit inside the actual the bolt. So when you rack it, it has an expansion thing in there that the gas would go into before it shot, and you pull the trigger and it goes, and away you go." And the pre-bans you could really tweak, so you can go anywhere from like a joule and a half up to like 6 joules. So the other one, apparently I had never turned it down, and it was shooting 3.7s at like 5 joules. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Paul's face says everything. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, look, like this is kind of where it's at. Like, give me a few minutes. I got to get an Allen key and I'll tune it up and I'll get it squared away. And so that's kind of what I had to do. Sorry, give me a second here. I think there's somebody at my door.
Not a problem.
I'll come back to this. Just hold on. Okay.
Hit V to cut your mic if you want. It's all the same to us. Anyway. Oh, I forget I'm running this show, so I can do that too, can't I? Oh, man.
You have the power.
Right. Mike stories, how about them?
I don't know.
The new premise of the show, so it doesn't. I mean,
apparently, yeah. No, none immediately come to mind, but I can certainly think of. He was thinking about like the flamethrowers And
back already, Mike?
oh wow,
Yeah,
that was
sorry
fast.
about
All right, no
that.
problem.
No, keep going. You guys keep talking for a second.
No,
I was just thinking.
how much we love
Mike
Mike's
is thinking
stories.
back to the time that we were at Hunters Creek. Pat was one of the first.
The strafer.
Basically, with the strafer. So that the strafer, and if I had my camera, I would bring mine up. I actually managed to secure one of the old Piper Precision Products ones.
Yeah.
They were basically the proto version of our flamethrowers.
Yeah, the vortex.
And our flamethrowers are basically based on the same design. So my current flamethrower actually has the guts of that strafer that I bought. But yeah, anyway, he had one of these things, and unlike our flamethrowers, you could essentially run the P3 strafers were made of 100% metal. You could run them up to 400 or 500 FPS, firing 120 rounds per second, and essentially use them as. The intent of the thing was for like breaking car windows. They originally marketed them to police officers as like riot control devices. But we were just in the parking lot one day, and he. One of the other guys, Cookie, actually, Mike mentioned, was just driving around in an ATV. He cranks up the reg on his strafer and just starts hosing. Everybody starts not just the strafer, but literally everybody just opens up on Cookie as he's driving around down the on the back part of the parking lot. And he only made one run, and God bless him, he stuck through the entire thing, didn't bail. And
no. He made more than one run.
Did he make more than one run?
Maybe I
just tuned out the other ones because I was just so like I was feeling like phantom pain from him getting shot. It literally looked like he walked into a beehive. I've never seen somebody with more welts on their body than that guy. It was insane. I'm surprised he didn't have to go to the hospital after that. Everything that wasn't covered, everything that basically wasn't his goggles. And that's all he was wearing. He was just wearing a pair of bug eyes. He wasn't even wearing like a paintball mask. And he was just annihilated. He must still have scars.
I'm confused. Though. Did he have one of these strafers, or did he receive?
No, he was on the receiving end of not just a strafer, but the entire ops worth of firepower pointed at him as he was driving around on an ATV from maybe 150 feet away. Yeah, it was wild.
I'm confused. Was he in play? Was this a misunderstanding?
No. It was just this
is
like
how it all started, because I work with Cookie, so I can tell you all the fun stories. So Cookie had borrowed Dusk's quad. He had a little racing quad. And he came through the parking area and was like, "Hey, everybody shoot me." And then he took off at high speed. So it was like 2 or 3 dudes kind of shooting at him, sort of. And then once people realized what they were doing, they just waited for him to come around again. And everybody got out there in a line. And there was literally like probably 30 of us, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And then Pat wanders over with the strafer. And I'm like, just don't hurt him. Like, he's pretty resilient. He's got goggles on, but like, don't hurt the kid. And Pat's like, "Oh, no. I got it turned all the way down." He had it all turned all the way up. So he was like just hosing like 600-700 rounds. I don't even remember how fast that thing shot. 700 rounds and like
it shot about 120 rounds a second. So yeah, about 6,000, over 6,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah. So he dumped the entire hopper on one pass. And then as Cookie looped around again, Pat opened it up and refilled the thing real quick so he could keep shooting at Cookie. He literally looked like he went over to a beehive that's about as big as, like
a walking beehive.
And just walked into it and then started punching bees. That's what his body looked like.
It was bad.
There's a picture somewhere. We'll find him eventually.
It's great because he was only coming from like one direction. He was making like a lap. So the leg that was as I recall, he was going from basically our right to left.
To the pond, yeah.
So the leg that was over the right side of the quad had no marks on it, but the leg that was on the left side of the quad was just completely annihilated.
Just welts everywhere. Right. Welts on top of welts on top of other welts. It was just welts everywhere.
It was insanity.
It was cool.
Yeah, he got sandblasted essentially.
Yeah. I mean,
I was thinking that
if you're into that.
That's what the kids are calling it.
But yeah, so the strafer kits were really, really wild. Towards the end of Pat owning it, I remember he was showing everybody how it worked, and the diaphragm blew out on it. The regulation diaphragm.
Oh yeah.
And he was shooting at the cabin,
and
just every window in the cabin was destroyed instantly. Like
I believe it.
One pass, he shot out windows on this side of the building, and then shot out the windows behind it, like right through the whole building, blew all the windows out.
Yeah.
And then I got yelled at by Kyle. It was fun. But yeah, it's, it is what it is. Like, over the years, like, you see a lot of this craziness and you see all the cool stuff, the technology changes and whatnot. And like, I've got 2 Polar Star guns now. I have one, it's a Polar Star Gen 1 M4, and I've got a Hydra in my AK. And like seeing the difference in performance and how well they shoot, like I still would rather take my Car 98s, get Josh, get our fucking, Scooby-Doo hide in the woods outfits, and then go out and shoot people. But yeah, that's just me, I guess. I don't know.
Fair.
So in any case, back to the Car 98s real quick, and then I'll let you guys go on. So we're out there chronoing, and the guy's like, this thing's shooting like 5 joules. That can't be right. And I'm like, no, that's about right. And he's real quiet, and he goes, where do you play that allows you to shoot 5 joules? And I'm like, I have my own fields. Like, I don't actually use it for anything under like 300 feet. And he was like, this thing shoots 300 feet. And I'm like, yeah, I can hit head-size target at 300 with iron sights. And he's like, nobody can shoot that. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to hit? And he's like, well, shoot that telephone pole. Okay. Round 1, clink. I'm like, that's 200 feet away. He's like, how do you know that? I'm like, I'm also a contractor and I know spacing and relationships real well. Like that's kind of my business. And then he was like, oh, well, see if you can hit that light post. I'm like, okay, fine. So I hit the light post. It took me 2 shots, but I hit it. And he's like, wow, that's like what? I'm like, that's 320 feet away, maybe 330 feet. And then Masato comes over and he goes, what are you guys shooting at? And I'm like, oh, that light pole. He goes, it's like 300 feet away. He says, yeah, I know. He's like, well, why? And I'm like, because that's what I want. That's what this gun's supposed to do. It's supposed to shoot 300 feet, when it's tuned up. And, we haven't done anything to the guns. We replaced the hop-ups in a few years ago. But, aside from that, like literally, they're all stock. They're just pre-banned Tanakas. Thanks to Derek, again, he's the one who first got the Tanaka. They got my brain turning where I started thinking to myself, geez, I really want one of these. Like they shoot so good. And after that, it was kind of all downhill from there. So, all the old stuff that people don't carry, that you don't see in the fields anymore, the stuff that interests me the most. I mean, it's interesting. Like, when I know that Paul and Tom have dealt with Daytona guns. But there was a guy, Jeff Jens, that was part of our group for a bit, who was really into Daytona stuff. I think he had like 5 or 6 Daytona guns. Jesus. And oh yeah, like they were crazy. And all of his guns shot so good, like just so good when they shot right, which was about 30% of the time.
Yeah,
30% of the time.
They definitely
30% of the time it was terrifying.
Yeah, I've heard they have like a 5,000 round break-in period or something like that.
More than that,
yeah.
A break-in period.
Oh no, you don't understand. Like the hop-ups on them are so hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
That in order to get them worn down enough to that sweet spot where you'd actually get a backspin, as opposed to shooting the moon every time you pulled the trigger, you had to give it a break-in time. And literally, guys would get high cap mags and just fire off entire high cap mags.
Yeah.
Like over and over and over and over and over to make sure they were shooting okay. And then the next game, they had to replace the hop-up bucking because it was burnt out by the end of the game. So they had to do the same thing all over again. Oh, hell, it was nuts.
Yeah, there are a lot of maintenance.
It was really cool. But that said, they shot really, really well when they were broken in. They were really flawless, replicas. I really enjoyed using them. Mm-hmm. Look at this jerk off behind me here. My stupid dog. Sorry, not you.
He was enjoying the store stories back on the chair earlier.
Oh God,
no.
She. That's Bella.
She's sorry.
Yeah, it's my little demon dog. But yeah, I mean, it makes me laugh because it's just, seeing like kind of how the technology's changed and how the player base has changed. It's the same problems though. Like anytime you have a field and you go out and you're running it, that's my dog barking. I apologize. If we're doing like, any kind of game, you always get the same questions from people. They're like, hey, can I do X, Y, Z? There's no vehicles at this event. Well, can I bring my tag-in grenades? For what? Well, they're chalk rounds. I want to shoot them at people. Well, of course you do.
Ouch.
No, you can't. Well, what if I only shoot at them from really far away?
While wearing multicam bottoms.
Exactly.
There you go.
In town with my 203.
Am I still on green?
Everything is falling in place.
And now you start to see how the jokes become cyclical. It
Right.
just comes back and back and back, and every time you turn around, it's the same joke.
Like poetry. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It's just beauty. It's pure beauty.
Throughout,
It's-
yes, timeless.
And it's all cheaters' fault. Yeah.
That's
What are the respawn rules?
more or less,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
Timeless
can
in that we are trapped in this feedback loop of a hobby and cannot embrace
You know,
finality
well, what are the medic rules?
in any context. Right.
There's no medics.
Right.
Oh, so can I heal myself? There's no medics. Oh, right. Do I have to go to respawn? I don't care where the fuck you go. Like, yeah, why are you talking to me? You know.
Right. So I
Yeah,
show
but-
up to this. I'm showing up to this op mic with obviously a very specific, for lack of a better way of putting it, set of rules where perhaps Team A has 5 camo patterns that are kosher, as does Team B. 5, they might be the same to keep things interesting, but ostensibly different patterns for each team.
Sure.
Can me and my 19 friends still show up in the same quasi or dollar store National Guard outfit?
Hey,
we
Joe
all,
Solox there.
we all. Hey Joe, what's going on? Thanks for joining.
Sorry.
Yeah, can me and my 19 friends dress the same way we do literally everywhere else, without regard for anything to do with the op plan, or do we got to read?
Well, okay, so yes, you have to read. So, like, we have Mirage coming up, right? And Mirage is a John Liu event, which should be fun. It's on Fantasy Island, which is an old amusement park, which should be absolutely a riot.
Shill away,
problem-
but just out of curiosity, Mike, this is long since sold out, right?
Oh
Just
God, yeah.
if
Oh,
among
God,
the
yeah.
public at large or remotely interested, yeah.
No.
Right.
Honestly, John Liu events are. I've done a lot of work with John over the years,
Right.
and I love John very dearly. He's a friend of mine, and I really want him to do well. And some of his stuff is fantastic. Like, honestly, it's just unbelievably
great things,
fun.
yeah.
We have a great time, and sometimes it's awful. And it, and a lot of it just kind of comes down to is like when you're talking about different big, not even John Liu, like Milsim West or whatever. Everybody has their own niche, game design, whatever. So I did a lot of work with Greg Brothers, and Greg is definitely one of my heroes. He's the first man that I ever watched on opening of a John Liu event, walked up to the mic and just said, "Get the fuck off my AO," and walked away. And that was the opening to the game. And I was like, is this dude coming back? Like, what just happened? Like, wow. And everybody's just like, should we
Hell
leave?
yes.
Like, what happened? And then he walks
Was that
back
an
over.
order?
He's like, all right, so you guys are still here. Let's play a game. But Greg was absolutely fantastic. And unfortunately his health got the better of him, and he couldn't actually, keep doing it, unfortunately. But he's a really funny dude. A lot of people didn't take Greg real well because his sense of humor was very dark. And he would say just the most awful things to people, mostly because it made him laugh, which I got. Like, as a person who gets dark humor, I'm with you, man.
He's doing a bit, yeah.
But a lot of people didn't really understand that sense of humor in a milsim kind of environment. So, any case, back to the John Liu thing. So, John, again, he wants to try and do good games and get good people to come out and have a good time. That's really what any production person really wants to do. This is not his only bread and butter, but this is a big chunk. So he does this really cool challenge game out in the Mojave Desert. There's an airfield there with a bunch of like old airliners that are just decommissioned 737s and shit. And basically he does a team challenge. So you get a 6-man squad or 8-man squad, and you pay whatever money it is. And then you have to go and like board the plane, kill the terrorists, save the people. It's wild, right? Mm-hmm. So he does this every year, and he actually takes a big loss on it. There's no money in it for him. Mm-hmm. So because it's like, I don't remember. He told me it was something ridiculous to rent the place out for a weekend because they have to have a staff and a safety engineer and firefighters have to be on fire and all this crazy stuff that goes with it. Yeah. Oh yeah. But he loves doing it, so he's always done it for these guys, and it's really cool. I think that some of the different like Airsoft GI and E-Vike have teams that go out and compete, and this year they had a team of law enforcement officers. First time coming out to do an Airsoft thing. They're going to board planes and do all kinds of cool stuff. All right, there you are, caboose. And so in any case, the crux of it comes down to is, these guys are professionals by trade, and that's what they do for a living. Is they're trained, law enforcement LEOs to come out and do this kind of stuff. And it was funny because like the op Ford said, like everybody else just storms the plane like a bunch of madmen, and these guys literally worked every single angle onto the plane, and then when they got on the plane, were very tactically correct. The problem was to do that takes a lot of time, and this is a timed race. So in any case, but I mean, like that's one of the things, like, you know, when you talk about, like, you know, cool games and stuff, like John does a lot of really cool stuff. But in any case, back to Mirage. So we have role players, and we're going to be doing a lot of role playing. We have a small section of the place where we're basically going to be in town. I don't know why John thought it was a good idea to put me in charge of this, but I'm in charge of all the role players. And so I, you know, basically put out a call and said, hey, you know, I need role players. And so there's a bunch of us. So the guys that are going to go to Mirage are going to have a fully immersive town. Like, there's a bartender, there's a mayor, there's a sheriff, there's a town drunk, an assigned town drunk. There's a beekeeper. Like, there's all kinds of crazy things. So they'll have to interact with all of our stuff. And, you know, the town doctor, who's Caboose here, like getting, you know, really into it. So when you come into this event, you're going to have to actually deal with people in real life who are going to be playing role players. Some of them will be sympathetic towards you. Some of them won't. It just adds that immersion factor, I guess. And it also gives us a chance to be just obnoxious. So that's kind of a nice thing. And, you know, so overall, it's just kind of, hey, you got that. So it's just, it's kind of cool to give us something to really play around with and stuff. So I'm super pumped for this event. It's not really I guess I'm being a bit of a corporate shill, but I really want people to go and enjoy that kind of environment. Like, I've always found that Airsoft games like Rev down in Ballahack, you know, or any of these places where they put on like a really high intensity role playing aspect. I always love those games more than anything else.
Very fun. Yeah, for sure.
So, sorry, that's end of rant for Mirage. But Mirage should be a really good time. I'm hoping to take a lot of pictures while we're there. I got a camera I got from Spencer a couple of years back. I do a lot of pictures and stuff, so I'm going to check that out and see if I can get some more cool pictures. So I'm just looking forward to it. I can't give out any spoilers, which sucks, because there's so many things that are going into Mirage that I really want to share, but I can't because I'll get yelled at. But it's going to be cool. I know that the guy who's the chief of staff, his name is Mike Hobson. And he's from Jersey. I don't hold it against him. And I mean, not all of Jersey's bad, but they do have a rain tax. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So if it rains in Jersey and you get like a lot more rain than normal and it goes in the sewer lines, it's metered and they send you a bill for it. So when Mother Nature rains, you get a bill in Jersey. Like, every place
implies their sewers work, though.
Well, apparently they must, because they get billed for it. But in any case, so Mike's running the show.
Really weird incentives,
right?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you put out rain barrels or something? Like, but that's also illegal to do. You can't catch rainwater, but you get billed if you have. I
was just saying, I'm imagining somebody just getting like a sheet of plywood and caulking their fucking drains. Yeah.
They make rubber plugs for that. I'm just saying. But that said, like, you know, so he's gonna be running the show, and he's got like he's a big fan of pyro. So I know that like his wish list was like a ridiculous amount of pyro, explosives, and stuff like that. So I'm really intrigued to see where he goes with this. Barring anything too major, it should be a really interesting show. We're working right now. John and I are working with somebody locally here. I don't know how much about it I can say, but we're trying to locate a place in Buffalo to run another smaller, like 150 person game. If we can get that off the ground, that'll be a go too, probably either late fall or early spring, depending on how everything lays out. The facility I was looking through was 250,000 square feet of industrial, just stuff like big generator things and like all this craziness. So if it actually goes through, again, I don't know for sure. It's between John and this guy to kind of work it out. I have a tentative op plan that would be team-based, kind of like the airplane thing that John does out in the desert there, is do a team-based squad, where you have to, your squad stays in cohesion the whole time, and your squad has certain objectives to go and complete, and you have a timer, and when you get done, you radio back in. My guys, who would be staff guys, would confirm that it was actually done, and then the team gets points. And then basically instead of having like a force on force, like force on force, you can go anywhere and do that. Like you can go to, Bob's backyard and have force on force. To me, I think that it's more interesting to see if there's different kind of, not so much atmosphere, but different objectives, Like I need you to go here and pick up a 600-pound thing, figure out how to get back to this point here, radio me when it's there. Those are my favorite missions. One of the first missions that I ever ran for the first game we ever did, I made a crew of, this is going to sound awful. I made a group of children carry a large wooden box filled with toilet parts. For 3 hours, they had to lug this box around.
I'm sure their parents were happy. They were nice and tired when they got home.
More importantly, the guy whose property we were on was like, "You're not going to be able to get these guys to do this." And I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will."
Check and mate.
And so then he's standing next to me as these guys come running out of the woods while taking fire, dragging this literally 280-pound thing. It was 2 full toilets broken to pieces, a bunch of rocks and some cinder blocks in a giant wooden crate with 2 handles. And they lugged that thing up and down ravines, through forests, through brush.
God love them.
Yeah. The pretext was it was the dead body of King Fudagar.
Right.
He's
Praise
big
be.
dude.
Who was the rightful ruler of Rochambeau.
Yep.
He passed away, and his daughter took over, and then we killed her too. And then we had an election, and we killed the future president. And like Rochambeau should literally be its own show. We'll just talk about the history. I'll talk to Evan and see if I can get Evan to come out because, like, I don't know if he'd want to talk, but I mean, honestly, like
he's in the chat all the time. Yeah, he's going to be a guest star.
But I'm just saying, like, he needs to get a headset and get in the ring and fight someone. But yeah, like literally, it was this brilliant idea. We kind of made up this stupid, hokey thing, and Evan took it and just ran with it. Like literally, just straight up ran with it.
Yeah, if you're that curious, it's to my knowledge, still
those were super cool.
Sorry, Paul, go again.
Yeah. Sorry, Evan used to do these like news flashes of like current events going on in Rochambeau, how like the Civil War was escalating and a bunch
the old news
like
flash,
It was really well done.
It was so good.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I remember reading those on the old wino boards and being like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, even when we had Redbrook up and running, a lot of that first couple of years we were open was all based on Rochambeau, and he used to put up all the news and stuff. Like it was so cool. Like I'm sure you're listening, but honestly, Evan, like you missed your calling in life. You should have been a game designer. End of story. Like I understand that you're in social work and you're doing good stuff and helping people, but Jesus, man, Jesus.
Trying to usurp.
We need this guy. We need this guy writing video game stories, not helping people.
Oh,
Get out of here.
Yeah. Don't help people anymore. People are they're awful. No, I'm kidding. It's actually really neat though. I mean, like I just recently had requested for all of the information that he had on Rochambeau. I'm going to pitch the idea to somebody who, again, won't be mentioned, but who's looking to expand their gameplay into something different. And Evan did all this history. We have all this fake media. We have all this stuff, and it's beautifully done. I mean, maybe it's not collegiate level, something or other, but honestly, like for the average player, it's better than almost every field I've ever played on. And that includes my own fields. Like literally, I've traveled around for years, and I've been to all the different paintball places and airsoft places when they started doing that. And I've traveled a lot and played in a lot of places, and it's wild because like the history for Rochambeau was so much more in depth than any other place I've ever played at. Even when they were basing on the U.S., they just didn't have the background, And then seeing the resources that he put forth, it's just nuts to me, absolutely nuts.
100%. Yeah, looks like he took down this remarkably immaculate Google site he cobbled together a ways back that looks just like a legit National Archive. Nothing is showing up on Google, but it used to be the first, if not the second thing that would show up on Google search results. So I'll have to yell at him for that. But
he sent it to me. I've got it somewhere. I don't know where.
I co-sign everything Mike said. I know I have. I'm sure I could mine the link if it's still active and just unlist it out of an old Facebook conversation or something. But even then, I couldn't tell people, hey, go to this. Anyway.
So, okay. I'm done talking. By all means, continue. Cool. Sorry. My bad.
Yeah, it's honestly about that time here. Tom, anything else fun going on in your end?
Yeah, nothing I can really think to add.
You better be mic and webcam shopping, let me tell you that much.
Yeah, fair enough. You'll see my
We'll
my
buy
beautiful face. on
we'll
the
buy
next
one webcam with our first ad money, and you and Evan. can
There you go.
fly for-
The ad dollar, the one ad dollar.
right. It's a capital investment.
So before I go too much further, I just want to throw this out there. So I see Joe Setlock's in here checking us out, which is really cool. Thank you for coming on, Joe.
Hit him up earlier. Yeah, thanks again, Joe.
You know, obviously Evan's in here being Evan, which is pretty cool, and I appreciate that. And then Zach is also. Facebook Messenger. He said that it's in there. Yeah. Evan sent all the stuff to me. Facebook Messenger. I'll try and get it for next time. I see that Big Zach's here. Thank you, Zach. He's going to be our doctor at Mirage.
Coming in. Yep.
And I definitely
reprising his classic role.
Right.
Yes. Many years refined. He has a severed leg.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah. Severed leg, the full doctor's uniform, and his German cap. It should be great. But yeah, so I just, I want to make sure we say thanks to the guys who actually did show up.
Absolutely.
All three of you.
Yeah. Damn near our 2.5 hours in. We're damn near our original view.
Hey, look, I'll take it. If anybody wants to waste time listening to my dumbass talk about shit,
right.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, this is I had it in the second or third last iteration of the title that's changed 5 times over the course of the stream tonight. But just to tell all you guys flat out, another fun bit I think would be cool to do just to completely justify my eventual link posting on like the tech groups and shit is do, in addition to whatever else we have planned that night, whether it's, recurring topics or whatever, through the night, it's just open Q&A. So we literally stop the show for a second.
Good idea.
In the chat.
Well, that'd be kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
Being, an Airsoft technology podcast.
Well, I think that you probably need to wait till we have more than 3 people, but yeah.
Right.
We need some cues.
I know Evan. He plays he's played a lot of ops with his 0 remaining guns these last few years. So if he has any other tech questions, he can sound off. But
like honestly, I'm pretty sure Evan's at every op. We just don't see him.
Right.
I believe that.
He's critiquing it.
Same deal.
The camo connoisseur. That's kind of the point.
Right. He shows up and goes, "That guy's wearing lizard."
Camo counts.
I still choose to believe that Mr. Andy and Jim Sinscalchi still show up to games. We just never see him.
I haven't talked to Andy in years. Jimmy and I still talk. So
I still got Andy on Facebook. He's around. But yeah.
Word.
So how do I change? That's a technical question. I'll ask you later.
Fuck it. Oh yeah, Evan. What kind of mortgage am I looking at for that Katsu nowadays? Has it increased or decreased with in the wake of the pandemic? Yeah, just fire away with the tech question, Mike. I might lop off this whole portion by the
No, you're fine.
Uploaded. I don't have a whole lot else planned. What's up?
No tech question. I'm good.
Okay.
I was just sitting here thinking, laughing. I love reading the comments. Like, there's not a ton of comments, but I love seeing the comments. And honestly, Evan posts up stuff that's really on point.
We get wild for a show with a 3-man audience. Yeah.
Well, it's
more
funny.
Hosts than audience.
We have way more fun with it though than I think we're supposed to. Like a lot of guys take it real serious, and we're just kind of having a good time with it. So
well, Tom and Paul were here at the beginning when I said our other top-notch moderator last time said it just felt too regimented. So I told him we can oblige.
Oh yeah, we can fuck that up.
Henceforth, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll fuck that right up.
Not a problem. So, Tom, do you need a camera? I have
no. I really actually have a decent camera, so I got to get a mic that plays nice with my piece of shit 10-year-old gaming laptop.
So you need a new laptop.
No, not even really. It's
he has one device with a mic on it, which is not cooperating with any of his headsets.
Exactly right. I have a bunch of really, really nice equipment that does not work together, and I just need to get the right components to make that happen.
Okay.
Yep.
Like
easy enough. Honestly, I think I could probably just install some drivers from my sound card and have my laptop working just fine. So yeah, I'll see about that for the next one.
Again, can you walk me through how that's possible? If our running theory of your 3.5 jack being fucked is correct, maybe it's not, but
what's possible?
I thought we concluded this is only a problem because of 3.5 jack damage.
Correct. Oh, no, so my sound card is an external sound card that plugs into USB.
Oh, okay, yes. So.
And drives my nice Sennheiser headset.
Okay. Word. Well,
yeah. It needs an amp.
Oh no, you're
You're
up on your main PC. I said for a goof, you could
Correct.
work on it now, but all right.
Like they have laptops for like $200, and just.
Oh yeah, no, I mean this. I use this thing for
And like
ancillary uses.
you're kind of an adult that has a good job. Like you just go buy it.
I could do that. You're absolutely right.
Okay. I'm done money shaming you. If my ridiculously broken ass can get up here, I'm just saying, like, the guy who's literally an engineer for a living should be able to do it too.
Well, fair enough. Hey, I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah, weld it all together.
I have exactly right.
Just globs of solder.
I just got my soldering gun and just started pasting things together.
You do have, when you came over to help me out, you do have solder we figured out is for electronics.
That's true. I do have actual electronic solder. I am not using I'm not using pipe solder to attempt to get electronics to go together.
Right. I don't know who would be out there doing that. But rewiring connectors after. No, I was too. That's I just explain the joke. Oh man.
I've soldered a lot of batteries back together with plumbing.
Oh hell yes.
Is that
plumbing solder? Hey, if it works.
Shame. Yeah, we actually tried soldering a mech box back together once. Yeah.
Brazing a mech box back together seems like a solid move.
Yeah, it was. It didn't work.
It was a solid Sunday.
The front blew off of an M16.
I mean, depending on who's got what left in the terms of time and resolve here, that segues into a nice don't of a hypothetical list of do's and don'ts I had been, keeping in the back of my mind these last couple of days. I was telling a coworker about a top-notch post I read a ways back. I don't even remember if it was local. I'm not going to name names for that reason alone, but yes, someone was quite fond of rewiring guns. This has probably happened more than once over the course of human airsoft history. But
I'm already crying.
Rather than buy a new $25 LiPo or even nickel metal hydride battery if they wanted to with the connector of their preference, they decided that, I don't know what the situation with the gun was, if that was already wired up and ready to rock or if they had to rewire that. Those aren't quite as dangerous to or as much of a liability to rewire however you choose. But they decided the battery needed to be rewired to match. Obviously, I mean, this goes without saying. It doesn't work without it. I mean, you could stick bare wire leads in there and probably make it work, but why play Russian roulette with
alligator clips.
5 rounds on the gun? Yeah. Alligator. There you go. If you have a full stock, that's full stock master race, dude. There's all kinds of stuff in there going on.
If you're going to use alligator clips, pro tip, make sure you tape at least one of them. Because when they touch, it lights the gun on fire. I don't know that from personal experience.
What I mean, back to my story, which is literally this almost verbatim. What do you think his approach was in as much as how he removed the existing connector with a pair of clippers?
He snipped them both at the same time and arced it.
I vividly recalled a chronicle of the battery exploding in his face.
That checks out.
Thankfully, no serious injuries. Yeah.
Yeah, because you cut both wires at the same time. It was not cookie.
Yeah, shorting a LiPo is a really great idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even if the explosion doesn't get you, Tom can attest that has some nasty fumes.
Gaseous lithium, lithium oxide. Bad news.
Yeah, primo. Not
you don't want that. You keep that well away from your lungs.
Yep.
I cleaned up my electrical connections with my toenail clippers. I've actually heard a person say that.
High end.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't find wire strippers, so I just stripped the wires with toenail clippers, and I was like,
Jesus Christ.
Okay. How'd that work out?
Earlier
we battery. Shocking.
I'm surprised.
Literally shocking.
Well, earlier we talked about people who knew what they got in terms of what they have on offer back in the store days, Mike. We also have people who know what they got in terms of tools at their disposal and those tools and the capabilities of those tools. So we're covering the whole gamut tonight.
It's wild, dude. I mean, I don't honestly remember a lot of the stuff that I've seen over the years because a lot of it just kind of became a blur of like bad running jokes. But I've definitely seen like just bizarre
schools of thought.
Well, I don't even know if it would be a school of thought. I'm not even sure if it's a train of thought.
In a Lovecraftian context.
It was
like a caboose of thought.
There was a
It was
caboose.
a short bus of thought.
It was on fire, and it was in a dumpster. And that was a thought process. And they went, yeah, this sounds great. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, you probably don't want to do that. And yet, here we are. I'm holding your gun that looks like you literally took a giant TV, ripped out the screen, held the sun over your gun, and melted the back end of it.
Ooh, that's no good.
Can you fix it? No, I can't. I don't know how to mold plastic. How did we get here? And then they're like, oh, my dad thought that it would be okay to use the car charger to charge my 8.4. And so
yikes.
he ripped off the plastic ends and attached the car battery charger to his 8.4 while it was still in the gun. And then it caught fire, and then the gun burned.
And everybody was surprised.
I wasn't. I mean,
no, nobody was
that
surprised.
said, I have seen an LPEG run on a car battery, live.
By God. For how long?
Steve Schiller did it. We were living at the mansion, the orphanage, if you will. And we were out back one day, and we were dinking around with some tech work. And he said, hey, this guy gave me this LPEG. I want to destroy it. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, how do you want to destroy it? And he goes, well, let's hook it up to the car battery. And I'm like, that sounds like a brilliant idea. So we literally made 2 really long leads and got jumper cables off my giant. I had a big, huge Ford F300 or F350 van, and it had one of those stupid, huge,
long ass batteries. Yeah, truck battery.
So I had that, and it was basically we hooked up to the leads, and you didn't pull the trigger; it just started firing. The trigger was completely optional. It melted the leads immediately.
And there's probably enough amperage in there for it to just jump the gap in the switch, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's what it was doing. And basically we just, as soon as the mag, and they had these really crappy 30 round mags, but he had 30 of them. So we're all out there with clicky loaders, filling them up as fast as you can. Because as soon as you put it in, it just dumped the mag, and you'd pull it right back out and put another one in. And you just keep doing this over and over and over. So it lasted for a solid 5 minutes.
That's astonishing that it lasted that long.
Yeah, a full 5 minutes. We went through probably about 45 mags.
Jeez.
And then the gears finally gave up. They were the crappy plastic ones.
Yeah.
Gears broke.
And they melted into each other. It was just going so
Melted
fast.
Gears podcast.
Yeah. It was wild. So I've seen that done. I don't recommend that for anybody to do ever. I suppose if you had something that would step down the amperage, maybe, but I don't know that much about it.
Just a giant heat sink, a resistor and a heat sink.
It's just a solid block of aluminum, Tom.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is just for clarity. It was a clear mech box with plastic gears.
So you got to see this failure in real time.
Oh yeah,
Beautiful.
literally.
Yeah,
we cut the top of the gun right off.
Watch those gears just become smooth discs on the outside.
I was surprised. It took a lot longer than I thought it would, considering the rate of fire it was just going.
I'm astonished that an LPEG would run for 5 minutes on a car battery. Yeah, it's wild.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The Plastic Gears podcast is going to be the show for our initiates.
I see Caboose posted up.
Continues, yeah.
One of the kids bought I don't remember what it was, some AG, and wanted to run 22s through it.
Oh my God.
I remember that. I don't know how to load this with 22s.
You don't. Let's just leave it at that.
What was that? You want to do what with your gun? yeah. So I got a bunch of 22s. Can I get it to go through? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, why? No.
I love that Paul and I immediately felt noticeably more tired after hearing that.
Yeah.
The timing was, as far as I could tell,
there was this,
but the timing was uncanny.
It's just,
Store stories I could take. It's totally not the caffeine crash from a large coffee at 4:30, but hell yes. I really have.
For me, I actually might not to be rude or anything, I might have to go just because I have an early morning tomorrow.
We're running overtime.
We're overtime. I got to go and get my wife from her friend's house. I've been drinking wine for 4 hours, so that should be pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
I love my wife more than anybody I've ever dated in my entire life. She's the most fantastic woman I've ever met, but my God. I just, I'm,
Mike, this is being recorded. Be very careful.
Okay. You've met me, right? Like I have a filter.
That's fair play. That's no, good point. Never mind.
It's nothing I wouldn't say to her face. Like, you know, she knows how I feel. But yeah, so I got to go out to West Seneca to go pick her up. Well, Alma to pick her up. So I'm supposed to leave here in about 5 minutes. So I'll probably bow out to tonight. But this was actually a lot of fun. Thank you guys for listening to my rant.
No, thanks for popping in,
No
Mike.
problem.
No,
Yeah.
we appreciate you making the time. You're
Sure.
in many ways and many times the headliner here. So
That's terrifying.
yeah.
We got to raise that bar, man. I'm telling you, it's a bit of a shit
The
show.
last live stream, I'm gonna get some clips videos out of this. We're making it big time.
I'm
We'll
in.
be at
Make
10
us
viewers
famous.
in no time.
Internet
Actually, since we are at our peak viewer count for the night, just a heads up to everyone. I don't think I've mentioned this to anybody. Well, Evan knows. Henceforth, if it generally works for you guys, well, you guys have already been told, we're looking at every other Friday at 7 will be our streaming schedule, more or less. I might actually get something like a Twitch set up, because over there you can do things like have a schedule and see, hey, these assholes are on next.
That's a smart play.
And or a Facebook page where we can post things like this. But from there, I don't think getting the word out is really the issue. It just, don't post anywhere besides our 100-man local group, which is fine. I don't mind. This is really just a show for us, and if we eventually take it to the next level, that's awesome. I know Streamlabs is one option for a digital tip jar, where you aren't paying any kind of cut, unlike say PayPal, etc. So maybe we'll look into that, and Tom's mic money, if one will.
Of course.
But yeah, anything else?
Nothing I can cover up.
I hope you guys are all having a good week.
Same to you, sir.
Nice. Hope you are too.
Fun weekend.
Absolutely. It's Squabby's birthday this weekend, so we're gonna go head out to.
He was here.
Medina.
He popped in early. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
He was asking, maybe you knew, Mike. He was asking what kind of what flavor vape would mask your human scent the best on the field.
Ooh.
So as to cloak yourself from local speed.
That's a good question. It would have to be something that would be like
baked deer piss, just straight deer piss.
No, you drink that for breakfast.
Right. That covers you for the first few hours.
I don't know. I think that honestly, you'd have to find something that would be natural to the area. Probably something that would be like a pine
natural
smell.
to the speed softer.
Right.
Natural to this. Ooh.
Right.
Ooh, a speed softer in his environment.
Blueberry mango.
Yeah, it'd have to be mango some shit. Like mango cream.
Yeah, peach mango.
Mango creamsicle. Yeah.
Yeah, mango creamsicle douchebag. I don't know.
Right.
Checks out.
I think alternatively, you could buy dollar store air fresheners and just to fix them to yourself.
No, you have to vape them, dude. Get it right. You got to get a really big heat coil and you stick the pine tree in it, and then you just huff that for a while, and then you blend in with all the pine.
Biohazard pine beer.
Because deep down inside, that's what we all want to do.
Right. Because of our time with this hobby.
Right. Just end it all violently. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
So,
all
right, guys. I'm going to head out. Have yourselves a great
fun,
night.
Man.
Have a good weekend.
You too, man. No, thanks for coming by.
All right. Take care, guys.
Right.
About that time for you too, here, Paul. Not kicking you out.
Yep.
All right. Have a good rest of the weekend.
I think we can safely cut it here.
Okay. Well, you don't want to go for another 25 minutes alone?
Another 25 minutes for us to cut out.
You can be my conscience, Tom. This is the real talk.
There you go. This is your conscience speaking.
So I want to buy 10 more AEGs, but I already owe $3,000 in credit card. What do I do, Tom?
Steal them.